I call the March 18th Special Assembly Finance Committee joint meetings with Doxon Harbor Board and Juneau School District Board to order. Ms. Wendell, will you note the roll? That brings us to approval of minutes. You have the February 25th, 2026 Assembly Finance Committee meeting minutes. Any changes to those minutes? Seeing none, those are so moved. That brings us to agenda topics, and I will be handing the gavel to Mayor Weldon for the joint meeting with the Doxon Harbors Board.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and we are co-chairing there with the Doxon Harbor Board Chair, Mr. Suter. So we will start with introductions. Chair Suter.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My name is Shem Suter. I'm the board chairman. Been on the Doxon Harbors Board for 3 years now. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I'm Beth Weldon, the mayor. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good to see you all. Thanks for your service and work. Greg Smith, Deputy Mayor.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Jim Becker. I'm on my last term of the board.
Hi, everybody. Christine Wall. I am in my 6th year on the Juneau Assembly. Big user of our docks and our harbors.
And Ed Smith, I'm in my last 3 years on the Harbor Board.
Maureen Hall's 2nd year of first term, and welcome to everyone as your liaison.
Paul Kelly, 3rd year on the Juneau Assembly. Nicholas Orr, I think I'm in year number 2 or 3 on the Docks and Harbors Board.
Neil Stanger, and I'm in my 2nd year on the Juneau Assembly.
I have to let go. I'm Matt Leiter. It's my 2nd term on the Doxon Harbors Board.
Nano Brooks, 1st year assembly member. Thank you everyone for being here with us.
Clayton Hamilton, Harbor Board. I'm a local fisherman.
Tyler Emerson, first term on the Harbor Board as well, also a fisherman.
Matt Cresswell, Harbor Master. I'm here tonight. Mr. Yucatil is out of town and could not join us, but he is on virtually. So we do have Mr. Yucatil present if we need him.
Robert Barr, Deputy City Manager. Good to see you all.
Adrienne Wendell, Budget Manager.
And before we introduce everybody else, let's go online and starting with any assembly members and Doxon Harbors before we go to Mr. Yucatil.
All right, I'm Ella Atkinson. This is my 3rd year on the assembly.
We have in the room from Doxon Harbors, Miss Leah Narum, who is our administrative officer, and Mr. Jeremy Norburn, who is the Deputy Harbor Master.
I think we have somebody else from Doxon Harbor on the line.
Mr. Mark Ridgway is online. He's declined to be a panelist.
Oh, okay. Mr. Yucatil, Port Director.
Good evening, Carl Yucatil, Port Director.
All right, is there anybody we missed other than Ms. Becker in the audience? Former assembly member and has an interest in the Docks and Harbors Board. So with that, we will go on to our budget presentation, and I'm assuming I'm going to that with you, Mr. Creswell or Mr. Yucatil? Okay, Mr. Creswell.
Okay, members of the Assembly, Madam Mayor, thank you for having us here tonight. Members of the board, good to see everybody. We'll go through our presentation for the Docks and Harbors FY27 budget. Just want to start off by thanking the Assembly for the continued support of Docks and Harbors. We have a very good relationship, and we look forward to continuing that along into the future. So thanks for inviting us in to present our budget to you. We've gone through our introductions of our board members. keep up with myself on the slides there. Only person I think not present, Mr. Horshover. He's in his first term on the board. He couldn't be with us tonight, and I believe Mr. Ridgway is attending virtually. We'll start out, as everybody knows, we're an enterprise department made up of two separate enterprises, the Docks Enterprise and the Harbor Enterprise. Under our Docks Enterprise, think everything downtown cruise ship type related. That's our docks. And then our harbors is everything else, the small boat harbors, the long trips, the associated uplands, and everything that goes along with our harbor operations. We will start with our docks operations. Strong, we are finishing up FY '26 strong, looking for a strong FY '27 year. The big takeaways out of the slide on your screen is, of course, we always look down toward our fund balance, and but first looking at our expenditures and revenues, you will see that once again our revenues exceed our expenditures, so we operate in the black, and we are looking at a contribution of around $692,000 in FY '27 to our fund balance. For the remaining of FY '26, we'll be making a $1.719 million contribution to our fund balance. So at the end of FY '26, we're looking right at $4 million in our docks fund balance, and that'll be increasing to 4.64 or 4.65 at the end of FY '27. Bottom line, on the staffing, 19.74 FTEs. We'll get into that a little bit in the slide. There's 1/100th of a change, and that was just due to some reprogramming of part-time limiteds at the port to allow us to better respond to the ever-changing staffing and security needs of cruise ship docks and how we evolve every year for how we're handling cruise ship security operations, and that does require, it's not a set it and forget it type thing. We have to look, Mr. Hinton, who manages the port for us, has to look at that every year and figure out what his best option is for recruiting, hiring, and retaining staff. And we realized this year that we had a need for a little bit more continuous coverage. So we reprogrammed a few part-time limited positions into a benefited 7-month harbor officer position. And that gives us a little better overall leadership down at the port and some of the off hours by adding that harbor officer position. We talked about the FTEs. One thing you may notice in here is in the increase in fund balance. You'll see that next year's a little less than half of what we contributed this year. As you all know, the Assembly passed the new dockage fees for the cruise ship, going from the way we always charged before with the price per foot. Now we're charging the lower berth rate. So that was a substantial increase, nearly a doubling of revenue for the Docks Enterprise. And that for the remaining 3 months of FY '26, that money will be going into the Docks and Harbors account, fund balance, all of it. So that's why there's a little bit of a delta this year, an increase above normal into fund balance. And then starting in July, we will start with the revenue sharing, or however we want to go with it, for where we're not going to take all of that doubling of fees. It is going to put us back around traditionally, or a little below traditionally, of what we had for increasing in fund balance. But overall, we remain financially solvent in the Docks Enterprise. Just a quick pie chart here. You can see for our expenditures in docks, personnel services is 32%, commodities and services 25%. And then now with the new fee structure, 43% of those fees for docks will be going to general fund. And then for the revenue side, 98% of all the Docks Enterprise revenue is made up for our charges for services. So we're looking at a $5.8 million budget for the Docks Enterprise in FY '27. Just a nice little chart here. Let me move the presenter box out of the way. The big takeaway on this one is, you can see our revenue in blue and our expense in red. And taking away the COVID dip back in 2021, recovered in 22, you can see where our revenues continue to exceed our expenses, as they should be. And then the green line is our fund balance, and fund balance is a fluid thing. We build it up, we use it for projects, and then we build it back up again. So you can kind of see the history. You can kind of tell where projects were as you look through that, where our fund balance went. So in summary, I already talked about our new cruise ship revenue. The way that's being handled through the assembly, we're transferring 2.464 million from the docks enterprise to CBJ support. And in FY 26, the docks enterprise was provided with 717,000 in marine passenger fees, which are used for port operations. And in 27, we will not be receiving that money. FY 27, I already talked about the 1/100th of a FTE increase, and that was just a reprogramming of positions. We thought it was going to be an absolute 1-for-1, but it ended up being just very, very slightly off. So there's a 1/100th increase to our FTEs. We're still working earnestly and staying with it, the cruise ship electrification for the cruise ship docks. AL&P is handling the contracting with our engineering firm for design. That's a company called H3. We anticipate by the fall having a 35% design. We're meeting quite regularly with AL&P and working through this project, so there'll be more to follow. We're estimating at or above $60 million right now for the dock electrification. We completed the $3 million Statter Phase 3D project, and it was a result of the transfer from Docks Enterprise to the Harbor Enterprise to complete that project. And just one other thing of note, we will be working and kind of marshaling the fireworks process for this year. So there's a $100,000 expenditure we're anticipating for fireworks.
And we thank you for taking that on. Before you get to harbors, let's see if there's questions on docks. Who has any questions on docks? Mr. Brooks.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was just curious if you could speak a little bit to the investment revenue income.
Let me go to the big presentation here so I can see it. And let me find the line. So I've got Miss Narum back here, and this is where I phone a friend for the exact language, or Mr. Yucatil. I know that, we have money in fund balance that gains interest, and that's my understanding of that's, I think that's all that it's made up is just our fund balance. I don't think there's anything going on more than just our fund balance and the interest it gains, but I will gladly ask Mr. Yucatil or Miss Narum if I'm correct.
Mr. Creswell, you're correct. And if you need more information, Adrian could probably weigh in, but that's just interest on our fund balance.
Thank you, Mr. Yucatil, chiming in. You were a good phone a friend. Anything further? Mr. Smith and then Ms. Wall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Creswell. Seeing that there's currently no support from marine passenger fees, I believe in the past, some of those funds were used for maintenance and security and things at CBJ docks. Now are those costs being covered using dockage fees, which were, as you mentioned, increased?
Thank you, Mr. Smith. So let's go back to the summary page here. Part of the essentially, we're down $2.464 million, and we're not getting the marine passenger fees. So we're still, even with those amounts, we're operating in the black. We're having to cover those costs out of the docks budget, and it essentially just means we will not have the same money we've had before to complete projects and other larger expenditures.
Thank you.
Ms. Wall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Transferring funds from your dock enterprise to your harbor enterprise for Statter Harbor. Do you all have like criteria that you need to use to be able to make that transfer, or kind of can you explain why that, in what situations you all choose to move money between the two?
Thank you for that. And yes, we do. We have it's not when we're looking at transferring money out of docks into harbors, it's not nearly as stringent as we look and the lens we look at marine passenger fees with. However, it needs to have, the way we see it as we operate currently, it needs to have a nexus to the tourist operations.
Anything further? All right, carrying on. Great.
Okay, we'll move on to harbors. Let me move this pesky little box out of the way again. I'm just gonna minimize it. There we go. Okay. Into harbors, start off again with the Harbors Enterprise remains financially solvent and strong. Our harbor operations seem to get bigger and better every year. We continue to be able to search for grant funding and use available fund balance to match grants. And thanks to the Assembly for some 1% sales tax money that's been provided, we've been able to complete a lot over the last several years. And I just kind of wanted to highlight that our Harbors Enterprise is thriving. Going down to the bottom, FTEs, that's the first thing I always look at. That's remaining the same. Uh-oh. Not my computer. I'm not quite used to it. So FTEs remain the same. Revenues continue to outpace expenditures. For FY26, we're looking at 7.15 of revenues, and in the same breath that I just talked about expenditures. The reason you see expenditures high there is because of support to capital projects out of our fund balance, and that's why you see that there. But the overall, our revenues are exceeding our expenditures. Down on the fund balance line, you will see a decrease in fund balance of 880,000 for 27 and 1.917 for the remainder of FY26. Takes our fund balance down to 1.204, and that is simply a result of all these projects that we're doing. We build our fund balance to be able to do them, and then we pull from it when we need to complete the projects. So harbors is a little more intricate than docks for sources of revenue and expenses. Expenditures, personnel services is, of course, people are our most expensive asset. 40% of that. Commodities and services make up 34%. Capital projects 29%, and then service on debt is 7%, and that's back from, I believe it's the 2005 Harris Harbor rebuild that we don't have much longer left to pay off in that few years, I believe, and that one gets paid off. For revenue, primarily charges for services is 72%. Rentals 18%, permits, income interest, state shared revenue. That's the raw fish tax that historically has been allocated to docks and harbors, and beginning in FY26, we will no longer be receiving that raw state shared revenue or raw fish tax. And that averaged anywhere from, I'd say, $250,000 to $450,000 per year. But we will not be receiving that in revenue this year. So that's a bit of a hit. But overall, we've got a $7.7 million budget for the harbors. Same thing with revenues versus expenditures in this chart. Still exceeding the fund balance. Same story as docks. We build and we use, and we build and we use. So that's the story behind this chart. Already talked about revenue remaining strong. We are looking at some unbudgeted expenses this year. There's not a person in this room that doesn't know all too well what we've dealt with this winter, especially my staff. Fishing vessel Julianne that sank in Aurora Harbor that, good job to Hanson Marine. It came up last weekend, and it's on its way to Sitka in tow now. May have made it already, not sure. So that was around $150,000 unexpected expense to docks and harbors. We're still working through whether we can recoup any of those costs or not, whether that be through the owner or through insurance proceeds if authorized. Right now, actually last week, we were up to $258,000 in snow removal expenses for the winter. It's still snowing, so that number will change. Anybody that drives by Aurora Harbor can see all the great work that's been done in there. That's Phase 4 is nearly complete. Major milestone. We started rebuilding Aurora Harbor, I believe it was 2013. And it's been 4 phases to get that done. We know that a lot of times we're better off phasing projects so we can capitalize on especially harbor projects, because our primary source of funding other than our revenue is the state municipal harbor matching grant program, and that has a $5 million maximum on it. So we're trying to, number one, we're trying to raise that up to $7.5 million. That's a real number based on the 06, when that program was established, 06 to 26, we're showing that should be about 7.53 million. So we, through the Alaska Association of Harbor Masters, we're working hard with the legislators to get that raised up for a maximum award of 7.5 million. So all that to say, $10 million projects are kind of a shot for us a lot of times to be able to maximize that harbor grant and everything, especially in the harbors enterprise we try to do. We try to do it with other funds and anything available. And Mr. Ucatil is great about looking for all these grants and getting these things done for us. So phase 4, it's been a 12-year job to get Aurora Harbor rebuild, and that's the final phase of rebuilding Aurora Harbor. We'll look for occupancy no later than May 1st of this year. So that'll be nice to have Aurora Harbor all done. We received a MARAD grant for the new drive-down float at Aurora Harbor. That's very similar to the one out past Alaska Glacier Seafoods, what we call the Alt Bay Loading Facility. It's just a little bit smaller, not a whole lot, but it'll be very beneficial to our commercial fishermen and users in the downtown area that need to load things on the boats and have trucks show up and offload catch or offload gear. We're really excited about that project, and we were very excited to get a grant for the vast majority of it. And then for our cost share on that, we applied for state harbor matching grant. We were successful, and I believe it was $1 or $1.2 million we got out of that decreased our burden on that project too. So that was a success. And we continue to pursue a new Aurora Harbor office. Anybody that's been in the office in Aurora Harbor knows it was a garage, and it was repurposed and walled in many years ago, and it's essentially falling apart. So we're looking at how we can be more efficient and combine some offices and maybe put the port director's office and ours all in one and have a new office there in Aurora Harbor. We are anticipating an increase in land lease revenue due to the potential Huna Totem title and lease. So that'll be a great addition to our fund balance. Thinking roughly 287,000 that'll come to us. While we're still on harbors, do we have any questions on harbors before we move into just general presentation?
Mr. Kelly.
Thank you. I was noticing back in the, on the slide about the kind of the overview of the adopted and proposed and projected budgets, that we are projecting no state shared revenue this coming fiscal year. Could you explain?
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. The state shared revenue is, we call it raw fish tax, but what that is that that's a tax on any value added seafood processed within the borough. So think, AGS, Taku, the fish that comes into there, there's a state tax on that. That's then returned to the municipality. And historically that had been shared with docks and harbors, and it does not look like it's going to be shared. It looks like it's going to general fund this year instead of docks and harbors.
I have a question while we wait for other people to have questions. I'm curious on your rates. How are they doing? People accepted them, or we need to raise them in anywhere, lower them in anywhere? Did we do a good job, or where are we with the rates?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. You talk to anybody in our department that wants to do more and have more and make things look better, we always say we need our rates higher. It's not the truth. We think right now our rates are fairly close to the ballpark of where they need to be. And I don't want to speak more to that because I have thoughts, but they're not formulated well enough to think about. But I think we're doing solid on our rates. We increased them, let's see, 3.5 years ago, I believe, is when the rate increase was passed. This year is our biggest rate that increased was our moorage, and primarily our monthly moorage. And it was a 9% increase. But what we did to kind of ease that in is we phased that over 3 years. It was 3%, 2.8%. And so this is our final year. We've got the 2.8% increase in there. And we still do adjust all of our rates by CPI each year. Now that we kind of think that we're set where we need to be on our rates, we keep that CPI adjustment. I believe that was 2.1% this year. So we're at least staying on a flat line, coming up with the cost of other goods. A couple rates that we have changed a bit. We were having a lot of trouble with uninsured vessels and derelict vessels sinking. We created a new fee structure for uninsured vessel surcharge that right now is set at $1.50 per foot if you're an uninsured vessel. We look to collect a little over $100,000 from that this year. And the way we wrote the language is a minimum of $1 per foot, a maximum of $3 per foot to be evaluated each year after the first of the year by the Docks and Harbors staff and pushed to the board. And that rate will be set each year at a rate not to exceed 20% of actual vessel disposal costs. So we have had a lot of sunken vessels this year, and several of those were uninsured. So we're waiting on a few more invoices to figure out where we're at with what it actually costs us to get rid of several boats.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. The follow-up was, is it enough to pay for the boats that were sinking?
TBD.
Ms. Wall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Huna Totem land lease revenue, is that built into your FY27 budget, and when does that kick in your budget? Or we just waiting for that?
I'm going to exercise my right to phone a friend here and ask Mr. Yucatel.
Mr. Yucatel.
Yeah, through the chair. So it is loaded into the FY27 budget. But it hasn't been signed yet between the two parties through the manager's office and Huna Totem, but we're anticipating that it will be.
Anything further? Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think Mr. Crosley said it, and I have a lot of faith and trust in you and Mr. Yucatel and the board. I just want to ask, and that's, I see a kind of a continual, anyway, there are continual negative fund balances not negative fund balances, excuse me, but a declining fund balance through the years. I just want to ask straight up, the reason that there is I will just say in deficit is due to your capital spending. It is not due to an operational deficit. Just wanted to.
Through the chair, Mr. Smith, you're absolutely correct. Our standard revenues well exceed expenses. It's the pulling from the fund balance as projects come up.
Okay, thank you.
And my last question, because I wasn't following it, where did we end up with the gold belt leases? Those weird little triangular pieces sorry.
Thank you.
He's
Madam
wincing,
Mayor.
sorry.
It was a lot of effort for a tiny piece of property, right? I'll ask Ms. Narum, we talk about this all the time. I just can't remember exactly where we are in the process. Is that done or is that? Oh, we're talking about the office over here.
By the
Okay.
Seadrome.
I was thinking about, okay,
Seadrome.
gotcha. Yeah, I can speak to that.
Okay. I'm sorry, I probably called it the wrong name.
Sorry, I had another piece on my
Should have said-
mind.
should have said the Seadrome. All right, any further questions? Okay, does the board have anything they want to talk about, or does we're opening it up to any topics. Ms. Hall. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The fees paid to other city departments, did we talk about this slide? Okay, okay, so I thought,
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were done.
yeah.
Only a couple more, Madam Mayor. Thank you. So just to finish up real quick and wrap this all up, this is just one we like to have from FY13 to FY26. This is our fees paid to other departments. Down here in the gray is just our interdepartmental fees. That's our support for HR, payroll, all the other city hall functions. But what I want to bring everybody's attention to here is the light blue. That is our insurance line. And you can see where we stayed fairly steady on insurance up through FY22. And that was sitting right around $258,000. But since FY 22, our insurance rates have tripled to $757,000. So that is a substantial increase to our budget, is that high insurance rate. So just, it's something we track, and we look at where that money could be if we weren't paying such high insurance rates, but we know that insurance is insurance and it costs what it costs.
We track it too.
Yep, I am 100% sure everybody is. So just a quick capital improvement projects. Aurora Harbor, looking for substantial completion of phase 4, looking to recapitalize the Aurora Harbor office, establishing a CIP in FY 27, and I already talked about the drive down float. Downtown waterfront improvements, we're working on the electrification study. We are really looking forward to hopefully being able to get design done on the new bathrooms and waiting area down in vicinity of Petrovich Plaza and get that construction completed next winter. We are currently looking to have a contractor come in and evaluate the structural condition of the timber piling under the Alaska Steamship Wharf. That's getting a little long in the tooth and just a tad bit old, so we're starting to need to think about recapitalization of that area. And then we have marine passenger fees from last year that we are adding a new comprehensive camera system to the seawalk and docks for security down on the cruise ship docks. Statter Harbor, we continue to work with the Corps of Engineers for the general investigation feasibility cost study for the Statter Harbor breakwater. I'm happy to report that that's moving along. We are on the hook for our part of the match, 3 years, $3 million, 3 alternatives. So at a minimum, $1.5 million is Docks and Harbors contribution to that. We were going to do a full geotechnical investigation in the vicinity of the project area. The Corps has recently come back and said they don't need the full geotech, which is good because it's going to save a ton of money. And instead, we're just going to conduct 2 penetrometer tests in the vicinity of the project area for the new Statter Harbor breakwater. Look to be complete with that study in September of 27. So we're about halfway through the study now. We're about 18 months into a 36-month study. Phase 3D at Statter Harbor, which is phase 3 is the whole passenger for hire loading area, but 3D is the paving, the lighting, the landscaping, and the baywalk around the area of the new parking lot, new bathrooms. Will be, as soon as the snow gets off, they'll be doing the final touches out there. They got really nearly complete with that project before the snow started flying, so that was great. Echo Cove, we're looking to apply for a Pittman Robertson Hunter Access Grant to put a boarding float in out at Echo Cove to make it a little easier for people to launch and retrieve their boats and come in and out of Echo Cove. We're gaining a little ground on potentially building a new launch ramp facility at where the current North Douglas launch ramp is right now. It's becoming more and more heavily used, and it's a very small facility, very hard to upkeep in its current condition. We have to remove the docks every year, and so it's essentially a seasonal facility. Taku Harbor, we received grant funding to replace the floats that run up to the shore from the T float out at Taku Harbor, and construction will begin here in the next couple weeks on that. Chicano Construction will be heading down to install elevated trestles instead of floats that ground on the rocks at low tide. So we're really excited about that one. That's going to look really nice and be a great improvement down at Taku Harbor. And the final project I want to touch on real quick is down at the Little Rock Dump. We have that property. We're always getting asked if we could do something for secured storage, primarily for our commercial users, commercial fishermen. And so we worked with a consultant. We were able to design roughly, I believe it's a little over half an acre, maybe an acre. It'll be fenced, improved pad fenced. We'll have some Connex boxes in there. It's just going to be a simple, secure storage area. Nothing fancy about it, but it's going to give our users a place to actually be able to store some gear. And we're looking forward to that project, and we look to have that done later in the summer. Significant expenditures. We talked about the wave attenuator. So that project, after we get done with the general investigation, then we'll move into we'll have the preferred alternatives, and we'll have to start looking at construction. We're just anticipating potentially $100 million project, which will be 80-20. So we'll be on the hook for $20 million of that project if it is 100. North Douglas Launch Ramp. That's potentially a $30 million project, and we're going to be working hard for grant funding to decrease our liability, financial liability on that one, assuming 10 million. New Aurora Harbor office building, assuming that's all on us, 5 million. Purchase fisherman terminal property, that could potentially be a $10 million burden. That's the area between Aurora and Harris Harbor. Dock electrification, 60 million, recapitalization of the steamship timber dock, 30 million. So a lot of these can be passenger fee funded, but that's just want to give everybody kind of an idea of what we're looking at long-term. And then we talked about with the new fee structure and how that's all working, the $450,000 raw fish tax, 2.5 million of dockage fees, and $717,000 of marine passenger fees. Looks to be a diversion to the general fund from the Docks and Harbors enterprise of $3.67 million this year. And that's it. I'll take any questions.
Who has questions? Ms. Wall and then Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will have some questions for the board on some of these, but one more for you, Mr. Creswell. The fisherman terminal property, I've been following that since I was on the assembly. We would love it. No one has wanted to sell it to us. This is a new number for me. Do we think we have an interested seller, or, are we just holding on to that idea of that money for someday?
Thank you. So we, as Docks and Harbors, would love to have that property. We think it's vital to our continued operations. It's a piece of property right in between our two largest downtown harbors. It houses a current boatyard. It's got a crane dock out there, even though we're building new cranes down on the new drive down float. We continue to think that it's in the best interest of the city to have that property that is in between kind of the heartbeat of our downtown marine operations. So hard to say what the exact price is. We just kind of put that in as a placeholder.
Follow up, but still not a willing seller.
Not this second, but discussions continue.
Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just from what I know about the wave attenuator and its importance and the infrastructure it will replace now, I guess I'm just wanted to, 20 million is a large number. I'm just kind of curious if, what might be the thinking on the strategy to be able to get to that number.
As far as how to fund that $20 million.
Yep, the local match or whatever it is. Yeah.
I'm not going to put my foot in my mouth, and I'm going to ask Mr. Yucatel to opine on that.
Mr. Yucatel.
Through the chair, Mr. Smith, what we'd like to do is convince the legislature to increase the maximum municipal harbor grant to 7.5 million. And so that this is floating breakwaters are an eligible expenditure under that program. Rock breakwaters are not, so we're lucky in that form. But if we got 7.5 million from the state, and we're hoping that it might be one of the projects that we advance for the 1% sales tax initiative in 2027. So there's 15 million, and we also think that this would be an eligible port expenditure because it supports the whale watching fleet. So that's roughly how we would craft a local match with the state DOT, municipal harbor grant, and dock funds, and 1% sales tax.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Mr. Brooks.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On the graph for the fees paid to other city departments, when it has like the breakdown there on the left is interdepartmental landscape building maintenance. For the landscape, building maintenance and fleet maintenance, is that to the CBJ departments that handle that? Okay.
Yes,
Thank you.
sir.
Mr. Kelly.
Thank you. On that same graph, you mentioned insurance is insurance. I was just wondering if you might have had an explanation for why it's gone up so rapidly. Is there additional property we're insuring? Is it just rates or some combination of that?
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. It's been explained to us many different ways. Insurance is a mystery to me, and I hear it a bunch of different ways, but we're hearing the national market, the risk nationally due to repeated large natural disasters. And Docks and Harbors has a lot of infrastructure by value. I remember sitting in an assembly presentation or something, we're in the top 3 of the city for value of infrastructure. So using that, we have a lot that needs to be insured. So our risk is there, our exposure is there, and we have a lot of infrastructure that needs to be insured.
So I think I heard you correctly that phase 4 was the last of Aurora Harbor. So I've been on the assembly just a little bit, and that has been a topic every year on our assembly, just so you know. So I hope you put a little bit of money aside for a nice party when that is complete.
I'll talk with the port director.
Anything further? Any questions? Say, any thoughts that we didn't cover from assembly members or board members? Mr. Brooks and then Ms. Wall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And this is just kind of related to a meeting I had earlier today with the Commission on Sustainability. They had some questions about what the process is when ships get sunk and the environmental aspect of it. So can you just speak on that a little bit, please?
Certainly, Mr. Brooks. So when we receive a report of a boat sinking or a boat sunk, staff responds. If it's during the day, it's a really quick response. If it's night or on call, or our security staff respond. We go down. Absolutely the first thing we look at is anybody potentially on board the vessel as it sank. While you're doing that, we make sure power is secured to the vessel. Once we determine that nobody's on board the vessel, then we start looking at potential pollution threats and infrastructure, potential damage to infrastructure. A lot of times boats sink and they're outboards and they aren't sheening much at all. Sometimes there's a large sheen coming off boats. We look if we, as the Docks and Harbor staff, can take any initial mitigating action to keep pollution from spreading. Unfortunately, this winter, we lost 10 boats during that December, January storm. And the crazy part is they were sunk and it looked like a parking lot because the harbor was so iced over and there was so much snow on it. So it was hard to tell in that case a lot of times how much or if any pollution there was. But what we're required to do and what we do is we immediately call the National Response Center, make a report, and then generally follow that call up with a call directly to Sector Juneau with the Coast Guard. And then DEC, they come down, we assess the situation. At the same time, we're getting in touch with the owner. We are finding out if it's an insured vessel or not. Then we're finding out if the owner has the means to deal with the vessel or not, whether the insurance will cover the raising. If there's no financial means, no responsible owner, or there's an owner that doesn't have the means, the Coast Guard oftentimes will open the oil spill liability trust fund and pay for. What that does is that gets rid of the pollution threat. So if that means they need to raise the vessel and pump any oil or fuel off of it, they do it. If they can do that in the case of the Julianne, that we call it federalizing a case. The Julianne, the big seiner in Aurora, that was federalized, but it was more advantageous to the Coast Guard to pay divers to go down and sting the tanks underwater instead of paying for the full raising of the boat to remove the pollution. Once the pollution's off the boat, then Coast Guard's responsibility is gone, and then it becomes the problem of the owner in Docks and Harbors.
Ms. Wall.
Thank you, Member. Do you mind if I ask a question of our board members here, if that's
what we're doing now?
okay? I wanted to bring up the revenue diversion here. All the groups coming in front of the assembly have been very polite, knowing that the city is in a tough budget place, but you know, in the direction on the dockage fees and the marine passenger fees that really came from the assembly. We wanted the revenue from the docks to increase so that we could cover those expenses previously covered by marine passenger fees, and so that some of the funding could come back to the community. So I feel solid about that direction and was part of that discussion. On the other hand, the Alaska Fisheries business tax and the raw fish taxes, you know, I think coming from that diversion is coming from our manager, who is taking direction from the assembly to try to find other revenue sources while the city's in a tight place. I'm not necessarily convinced that, you know, that funding is, you know, appropriate somewhere else than harbors. And so while you all are here, I'd definitely be interested if there are board members who, you know, feel strongly about what that funding should be used for, or what it would be used for if we were to not make that diversion on the fish tax.
Mr. Leiter.
Thank you for that question. And I said something very similar to what I'm going to say now to Ms. Hall at one of our previous meetings. The fish tax from the harbors is, in my mind, a lot more difficult to stomach than the dock changes in revenue. And the reason I say that is because the dock changes in revenue, a lot of the cruise ship tourism affects a wide swath of the city. And so I get it. I get that we need to fund the hospitals that take care of those people. I get that we need to, you know, figure out the sewers where their sewage is going, all of that. It's less palatable to me removing that fish tax revenue, because we need functional harbors for the fishermen where that revenue is coming from. And I'll try to be very polite as well. One of the questions I have and the concerns I have is that we spent a lot of time and a lot of pain for our users to increase our fees so we could achieve the solvency that Mr. Creswell has talked about and Mr. Ucadel has talked about. And it's what I get concerned about is, you know, if we were in the red, would you be taking our money? Not, I shouldn't say our money. I'm losing my politeness, but and so we put this work in to really squeeze our users, and that's hard on the people who use that for their commercial life, and that's hard on our people who use that for their recreational life. And so I don't want us to be penalized for being financially responsible, and that's what it feels like. Thank you.
Mr. Hamilton.
Thank you. It's just me as a fisherman, as a board member, as a, you know, Juneau citizen. Harbors is doing fine too, and we have been the whole time, even before the rate raise. And you know, like, this would be a little harder to stomach if we could show that we earmarked any of these funds. You know, like, if the fish tax had been going to any specific facility that I use for years and years and years, then I might be upset. But as it is, you know, there's no earmarked funds for anything. And like, we're doing fine and we're making money. So it doesn't really sting that much. Just remember when, you know, we do need those cranes again, or, you know, when the university does change its mind, you know, like, you talked about that $10 million fee, and like, my God, if we had to replace what's there at the fisherman's terminal, it'd be a lot more, you know, like to rebuild everything that's there. You know, like, that's the only functional yard really. Yeah. And this is out of line too, maybe off topic, I guess, rather. All right, out of line, whatever you choose. The two funds aren't actually two funds. It's all one big pot of money that we make a bunch of imaginary lines in. So, you know, like, there are questions about like, how do we justify this or that, but we're kind of making hurdles for ourselves with that in that regard.
Anybody else? Mr. Emerson, you grab the mic.
Thank you. I just kind of echo Matt's sentiment. I think, as a commercial fisherman, bringing fish in and delivering and the processors, they're paying less money for the fish because they have to pay that tax. And I feel like it should benefit, the infrastructure that we're using and we're paying for. I think the rate increase, I mean, people understand it, but if you bump up the rate and then at the same time, pulling that revenue out from that source, I think it's harder for people to see the need. So I'd kind of encourage you to look elsewhere, but I understand the city's in a tough spot, so.
And unfortunately, those fees have no strings attached, unlike your mortgage fees. Who else? Mr. Suter, do you have anything to chat on today?
I would just ask that we make sure that everything's covered that we need to keep the docks going and keep them updated. The steamship wharf, that's going to be a huge recapitalization project. The Statter Harbor wave attenuator, and then recapitalizing the entire float system out there afterwards, right? They're both in the same shape, built about the same time. So that project would be pretty difficult to phase as well, just by the nature of the construction. It's anchor stayed. So there's some big things that are kind of floating around out there. And I'd ask you guys to keep that up front when you're thinking and making plans for stuff.
I think your port director reminds us of that often.
That's good.
Ms. Hall.
Yeah, regarding the fish tax revenue, just one little point I'd like to make is fishermen have children too in our schools, and we are pinched pretty tight right now with revenue for our schools. And so anyway, I know down in Oregon where I grew up, the timber receipts, they would often go towards the schools to help support that. So yeah, just maybe take some of the sting out. We're all in this together. Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do want to just say, as being the Docks and Harbors liaison last year, I definitely want to appreciate the work that this board does to really try to achieve, I'll call it maximum value for city public assets and land and things. So I may not agree every time, but I know that is a value that they are going for, and I appreciate them fighting very, very hard for that. I also know that and I've seen them make decisions that were difficult in the face of, like all the public testimony, like we have to do, was for a different way. And they were like, this is the right thing for this enterprise. And they, did that. They took that action. So I want to acknowledge that. And I'll just say, looking at the budget, I am looking, and I have to, run the numbers and the math, but there's a lot of infrastructure. There's, some important improvements as well as just standard maintenance. And obviously we're in a bit of a fiscal pinch at the city, but I don't want to have to, because we're maybe not you guys aren't generating enough, if you're not able to put enough aside to do your improvements, that will, present a significant problem coming back to the community later. So anyway, I'm trying to, pay attention to, do you have sufficient revenue to be able to reinvest in your infrastructure and do those things? So thank you.
Anything else? Quiet crowd tonight. Mr. Orr, you haven't spoken up yet. I'm not putting you on the spot. You don't have to say anything.
You are putting me on the spot. Actually, I thought Matt
I'm
Leiter.
going to go to Ms. Smith next. right?
No, I think Matt Leiter put it great on the fish tax, and I was just going to let him. I was like, we don't need more comment. He nailed it. That was pretty much it. I mean, I could put it in a way that's less tactful, but I think we'll leave it. That's what Matt said.
Always wise. Ms. Smith, do you have anything while you have us here? The list is long.
I was afraid of that.
And you don't have to say anything. I'm not trying to put anybody on the spot. Just,
My mother said, if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. So I'm gonna just leave it at that. Thank you.
all right. Anybody online? We haven't heard from anybody online. Yeah. You have anything, Mr. Becker?
I've lived in Juneau virtually all my life, except for the service. And I watched the harbors grow to respond to the needs, and I do it professional. We had one Canadian cruise ship for a long time. Now we've got many cruise ships and everything. And I think being involved in the board, I see everything that has to be done. And as far as I'm concerned, they're doing everything right. They're very responsible. And this winter is, we've got so much snow. We had a lot of boats sink. And they're taking care of business. And I'm glad to be, I'm in my last term. I'm glad to have been part of that.
So. Yes, you guys are a very high functioning board, and we appreciate that. We appreciate Mr. Yukatel's leadership and Mr. Creswell's also, so. And all your guys' time, because I know you put a lot of time in, and sometimes you have to deal with some pretty heated public, so we appreciate you taking that on for us too. But anybody else before we adjourn? Mr. Yucatel, you want to add anything?
Madam Mayor, no, thank you for the kind words, and Docks and Harbor's staff and board, and we enjoy working for the city and enjoy bringing services to the public. So we'll keep doing what we're doing, and take direction as we need direction. But it's a pleasure and honor to work for the city.
Thank you for that. Okay, going once, going twice, seeing none, we'll give it back to, well, actually, we're going to take a break because we're going to have another meeting here. So let's take 10 minutes. I understood their text went out for 6:30. Is that correct? All right. Okay, well, we'll just, there's snacks in the other room if anybody wants to grab some before we go. And anyway, we'll take a break until we see some school boards. We'll bring us back to session, and we are now with a joint meeting with the Juneau School District Board of Education. So, Madam President, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Brittany Choney Haywood. I'm currently serving as the board president, and this is my third year of my first term.
Thank you, and I'm the mayor, and I've been a mayor for a long time. Way too long. Mr. Smith.
Greg Smith, in the first year of my third term and honored to be deputy mayor.
Hi, Elizabeth Siddon. I'm in my third term, and I'm currently vice president of the board.
Hi, everybody. Christine Wall. I am in my 6th year on the assembly.
Hi, everyone. Amber Fromhurst. This is my second term, and I'm the clerk.
Assembly member Maureen Hall, and I'm in my second year of the first term.
I am Jenny Thomas. I am in my first year of my first term.
Paul Kelly, third year, first term.
Neil Steininger. I'm in my second year of my first term on the assembly.
You didn't offer that to me. Steve Whitney, and I started a long, long time ago, back when the mayor first started. And then I stopped, and then I came back again. And so now in this time, I'm in my first year of the new first term.
Nano Brooks, first year assembly member. Thank you everyone for joining us today.
Melissa Cullum, first year, first term.
And now, Mr. Hauser, you want to start with you, and we'll just go down the line?
Frank Hauser, Superintendent of the Juneau School District.
Nicole Herbert, Chief Financial Officer.
Robert Barr, Deputy City Manager.
Adrian Wendell, budget manager.
And Ms. Atkinson, you want to chime in?
I mean, you did a great job for me already, but I'm Ella Atkinson. I'm in my third year.
All right, thank you. Well, before Superintendent Hauser starts, I do have a question. What does the clerk of the school board do?
Usually second everything. It's a lot of, you got to be on your toes.
I've always wondered what the clerk did, so now I know. So we saved that job for the deputy mayor or vice versa if he's chairing. So I understand, yes, you have to keep track of everything. All right, with that, Superintendent Hauser.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor and Assembly members, members of the board. Thank you for providing us this opportunity. We are going to do a overview of the FY27 proposed budget and the budget that was adopted by the board in the final reading last week. For the FY27 budget process, we started with a preliminary budget, which was a rollover budget created based on maintaining current programs and services. It's important to note that for that preliminary budget, it was unbalanced. It had been adjusted for ADM or enrollment and pupil-teacher ratio. So there was some adjustments to staffing based on the ADM and pupil-teacher ratios when we brought that to the board, and it only included the operating fund. We then transitioned to the proposed budget that was before the board. Of course, we were going through the budget input process, received a lot of budget input process in the FY27 budget development process for the consideration, as well as looking at adjustments to the state and borough funding based on known information at the time. The proposed budget did require board approval. That proposed budget will be submitted to the assembly by the April 1st deadline. It has to be balanced by state law, and it will include all funds. Ultimately, we will get to the adopted budget that was adopted by the board, and that adopted budget, when it finally makes its way through the assembly too, will go before the board. Will go before the State Board of Education, needs to be approved by the state by July 15th. It will include all funds, and again, that has to be balanced. This is just an overview of the budget development timeline. The board started the development process for the budget in January. There were multiple meetings for the last few months. We are now in March. Of course, the budget is ready to be transmitted to the borough. That is the adopted budget. It will be transmitted to the borough, part of our conversation today. In April, hopefully the process will take place and the budget will be approved by the assembly as it moves forward. And then of course, by June, we will submit it to the state for before the July 15th deadline. This is just a quick overview of the number of meetings that took place and input sessions from January to March. The district did hold multiple public meetings on the FY27 budget through the development process. In looking at the development of the budget and the proposed budget that the board adopted, the enrollment numbers for the Juneau School District are still projected to decline. We're seeing approximately about 1.5 to 2% reduction from the prior year. The enrollment numbers looking for FY27 is 3,767, and you can see a breakdown of traditional enrollment in our brick and mortar schools, charter schools, and correspondence programs. As always, in the determination of the revenue coming into the district, it is all based on state funding, city funding, and a little bit we receive from the federal government. When looking at state funding per AADM, as you can see, this is the trend over the last decade for the base student allocation. I want to point out that back in 2025, for the fiscal year 2025, there was an addition of one-time funds of $680 to the base student allocation. In 2026, for the fiscal year 2026, the state did make permanent a BSA increase. What's important to note is that increase that was permanently in the BSA was $700, only $20 more than what the districts received in FY25. The $680 one-time fund for FY27 in the development of this budget, we are anticipating a BSA of $6,660, which is maintaining the BSA that we had for this year, FY26. At this time, we are not anticipating or projecting an increase in the base student allocation from the state, even though there are some bills there. We are not hearing that BSA is likely, but at the same time, it would be nice. But at this point, we are building this budget based off of the 6,660 BSA.
As we look at what that means for our proposed revenue for next year, we're looking at $76 million. That's assuming that we'll receive the maximum contribution from the city and borough of Juneau. It's including the steps down and the hold harmless. So when Juneau School District consolidated, they were underneath the hold harmless provision with the state of Alaska, which meant that we were kind of being able to bridge the gap between the decrease in enrollment for 3 years. And in 2027, it'll be the third and final year of that step down. So that's the majority of the decrease in our state foundation funding and that 2% enrollment decline. So on this pie graph, we can kind of see that CBJ's appropriation makes up 47% of the school district's budget. The state is about 52%. I have broken out the hold harmless piece because that's really important for us right now to keep mindful of, is that almost 2% of our budget right now is related to that hold harmless funding we have in 2027. That will not be there for us in 2028. And then other local revenue, tuition, and Medicaid reimbursements, that makes up the other 0.96% of our budget. And just a different way to look at it, we have our actual graph that kind of outlines every single line of our local sources, borough, local tuition, E-rate. And then from the state, we have the foundation funding, we have our TERS and PERS on behalf, and then the other state revenue is the PFD lottery. So if when you are signing up for your Alaska Permanent Fund dividend, it asks you if you want to buy an education raffle ticket, and that's about the amount of income that we get on an annual basis from that education lottery. And that last one, revenue from federal sources, the $30,000 is the amount we receive for about Medicaid reimbursements. At the bottom, that's showing how much of our projected fund balance that we are going to be using to balance our 2027 budget. 5,700,000.
As we talked about earlier in the budget, we started with a rollover budget with adjustments for enrollment numbers and some small adjustment with staffing based on the ADM reductions that we were projecting for FY27. The FY27 budget does maintain the pupil-teacher ratio, or the PTR, at all grades. The PTR is used to calculate the classroom teacher allocation for the FY27 budget. One of the nice things that you'll see is the board was able to maintain the pupil-teacher ratio from this year FY26 in FY27's projected budget. So for kindergarten through third grade, the pupil-teacher ratio will be 26-1. Fourth grade through sixth grade, the pupil-teacher ratio will be 28-1. And for secondary schools, 7th through 8th and 9th through 12th grade, the PTR is 30-1. It's important to note that this is a budgeting tool, that there will be variations in classes. Some will be a little bit higher, some will be a little bit lower, but this is, from a budgeting perspective, maintaining those PTRs that we have seen. And I would like to point out that not all districts across the state of Alaska are able to maintain their PTR right now. They're having conversations about increasing PTR. So we are, I think, because of the hard work that the board initiated a few years ago and looking at the budget, we've been able to maintain those. And of course, the support from the city and borough of Juneau. This year, the district was excited to launch Balancing Act, an interactive online budgeting simulation tool, which gave the community an opportunity to be hands-on with our budget. But like school districts are required to do every single year, the budget that people submitted was required to be balanced before they were able to submit it. And so if anybody is watching right now and was like, I couldn't submit a budget because it was really red, it was because you had to have a balanced budget. And so I know the city used Balancing Act a few years ago. We found it really helpful, and I think it was really informative for our community members and families to go through and see the breakdown of how we allocate funds across the district, how much goes towards instruction, how much is used for supplies, and so forth. And I think it's a great tool to help educate as well as inform the community about the budget for the school district. It was open for 17 days. We had 825 page views. Average time of interaction was about 8.42 minutes, and we received 55 responses.
Looking at our expenditures for 2027, we present them in two different ways. We present them by function, and this is required by the state of Alaska's Department of Education. And it kind of speaks to what the purpose of those funds are being spent on. Are they spent on directly in the classroom? Are they supporting special education? Are they more supporting students indirectly or the teachers indirectly? And so when we look at the breakdown of our expenditures by function, 75.28% of it is going directly to instructing students. We have instructional support. Those are the departments and the areas that support the schools, but not directly. That makes up 18.63% of our budget. And then non-instructional, that is district administration and district administration support services. That makes up 6% of the district's budget. The other way districts are required to track their expenditures is by objects. And so this kind of breaks it down into different categories of, are they salaries? Are they benefits? Are they for travel? Are they for utilities, insurance, supplies? And so when we look at our budget from this perspective, 86% of our budget is spent on salary and benefits. We are in the business of people. And so that makes sense that the majority of our budget is spent on staffing our schools. After that, purchase services makes up 8.91%. That is predominantly high because that's where all of our utilities are at. Supplies and other expenses make up 4.2%. And then transfers to other funds, it makes up 0.72%. And those are the transfers that our operating fund sends out to support the deficits in our student transportation special revenue fund and our nutrition services special revenue fund. something additionally we did this year in order to kind of continue to increase that transparency and the understanding of what makes up our budget is we prepared the all funds report, which the Assembly has seen in the past, but in addition to seeing our budget by revenue, object, and function, we also published 59 pages, which kind of showed you the budget by either department and or by school. And so it's going to be a way for not just the district Board of Education, but also the public as well to kind of see comparative year to year, what do those department increases look like, or what do those school increases look like, and see and be able to ask more pointed questions to really understand what's happened in the budget from year to year at a different level than previously in these past few years. So we're excited about that and kind of be able to continue that momentum going into next school year.
The City and Borough of Juneau Assembly has been very generous to provide additional funding for non-instructional supports. And so for the FY26 funding for non-instructional shared services items from CBJ was about $2,115,000. For FY27, the funding request for non-instructional shared services items is $2,109,000. This is a reduced ask for the FY27 over FY26. In addition, the district requests the Assembly Fund General School Operations at $35,801,900, which is the amount permitted according to the State Foundation funding formula. This is an increase of $797,188 over the FY26 originally approved budget. The district also requests the additional $2,109,000 for the non-instructional programs of student activities, student transportation, food services, community schools, and the Learn to Swim program. The FY27 budget really does reflect the district's commitment to transparency, to effective and efficient use of resources, and to fiscal responsibility. In November, the district received a clean external audit with all funds in the black. The FY27 budget represents the district's best effort to accurately anticipate or request funding resources and to work within that level to provide a comprehensive yet sustainable level of service for students and the community. And so I just want to take a moment on behalf of the district and the board. I would like to thank the Assembly and the City and Borough of Juneau staff for their continued support of the students, staff, and community of Juneau through your support of the Juneau School District. At this point, that concludes our presentation. If there's any questions, and goodness sheesh for giving us the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Who has questions? All right, well, I'll start while everybody thinks about what question they have. Going back to your chart on enrollment, tough question on 2028. Are we still expecting a decrease, or are we hoping to plateau, or?
At this point, we are still anticipated continued decline in enrollment. Like I said, we're seeing right now about 1.5% to 2% enrollment decline. And of course, a lot of that is based on, the outmigration that we're seeing across the state, reductions in birth rates, as well as just the bubble classes, if you will, of older grades as they transition out. There's not as many younger grades coming in. There is hope that within the next 3 to 5 years, there will be some stabilization with the ice cutter, the icebreaker coming in. But at this point, we are still anticipating for FY28 reduction in enrollment numbers.
All right, thank you for that. Okay, so now we have Mr. Smith. I couldn't tell if I saw your hand as well, and then Mr. Kelly.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thanks, Superintendent and members of the board. Definitely very much appreciate your work and time. I know it is significant. I had a question on fund balance. How much is in, anyway, what would happen if, if this budget is approved with, anyway, how much would remain? And then remind me on, I know there's interesting strings on school district fund balances. So can you just give me a very brief, reminder of what some of those are?
If I'm understanding the question to the chair, to Deputy Mayor Smith, the kind of guardrails or strings when we look at fund balance. There are really two, and Nico might be able to add more to this, but the two that I'm thinking about, the state statute does require that districts cannot maintain more than 10% of the prior year's expenditures as fund balance. And so that does set a cap on the amount of money that can carry over in fund balance. Districts can retain in their fund balance into the next year. In addition, the board does have a policy that requires at least 1.5% of that fund balance, and that's expenditures for that fund balance be held in reserve. And so trying to keep that bottom level. And so while there's a cap, there's also kind of that 1.5 bottom level as well. So those are the two main guardrails that we look at with the fund balance.
Okay, I'm going to ask this question a little bit different. On page 34, you say you budget the use of fund balance. How much does that leave in your fund balance?
That leaves the board minimum that's required to hold and about another, I think 700,000 on top of that. So 1.7 million.
Okay, I think that was more your question. And then they here answered your sidebars of that thing. Ms. Wall and then Mr. Kelly.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is on page 41, the non-instructional funding request. Can you just kind of go through some of these non-instructional items and help me understand which of those are in this request fully funded by the city and which ones are supplemented by other sources? So I'm assuming Learn to Swim, that's the full cost of the program, but maybe food service is not, or just kind of at a high level, what percentage of these represent the total of those programs?
Yeah, Ms. Herbert and I might trade off on some of these. So starting at the top, really with 101 high school activities, that $1.2 million does provide the lion's share of the support for high school activities. The rest of the funding is generated through donations, through fundraising, as well as the district does provide a little bit of funding for that through some of our staff support, but the majority of that $1.2 million goes towards providing high school activities. Very similar for the 90,000 for middle school activities. Student transportation is its own fund. And so the request for the $409,000 really is to try to address what is the funding level for transportation. Just received the first increase recently with the BSA increase, but it still does not cover the cost of the contract for transportation. And so what you're seeing reflected, the request in this non-instructional ask is really to try to address that deficit that is created with the contract costs. And that really is similar with the food service. Those are two special revenue funds that the district does receive identified funding from the state and support from the federal government for those. But the ask really is the difference in what is anticipated for the deficit to be at the end of the year to cover those costs. As far as other programs, Learn to Swim, you're correct, that helps cover the cost for Learn to Swim, and community schools, it does provide for the community schools program, the funding that is that $200,000. There's additional supervisory staff for like the community schools and the staff that work for there that is paid for out of the general fund, but the majority of community schools is funded out of that $200,000.
Before I go to Ms. Kelly, I'm going to do a follow-up on that question. High school activities, let's talk about that because it's been the same every year and now we only have one high school. So can you tell me why it's the same number with just one high school?
Yeah, that's a great question, and thanks for that question. While it's one high school, we have more students that are participating at one high school, and so the needs for coaches, we've expanded some of the coaching staff to be able to provide enough coverage. One of the things 2 years ago when the consolidation happened and when we came to the ask, I want to say it was about 2 years ago, was this commitment to make sure that we did not turn students away. And if students wanted to participate, we were able to have that. And that means that a coaching level of maybe 3 head coaches or 1 head coach and 2 assistant coaches wasn't enough to cover all of the students. When you have ski programs, you have cross-country programs, and you have near 100 students out there that are spread out across the, trails. You want to make sure that you have enough coaching staff to support that, as well as making sure for our volleyball teams and our basketball teams, you not only have your varsity, your JV, your C team, your development team. You want to make sure that you have enough that expands out to make sure students have those opportunities. And then also, when you have larger teams, making sure that those teams still have the opportunity to travel. Varsity usually has an opportunity to travel. JV has an opportunity to travel. But some of those students in the C teams and development team programs, we want to make sure that we provide them, at least throughout the year, an opportunity to have some kind of experience outside of just practice. And so that's one of the reasons why you're seeing that that continued ask at that level, is to be able to provide and maintain that same level of support for all of our students, to be able to have access to the activities and not turn any students away.
All right, thank you. Mr. Kelly.
Thank you. I was just looking at, on page 13, the line item for energy. I guess it doesn't particularly stand out when you consider some of the other items on here, but I was just wondering if the school district has been able to find efficiencies in energy usage in recent years, or if they have any plans to become further energy efficient with their buildings.
Yeah, through the mayor to Mr. Kelly. I think one of the things that we have done is through support of the city, the Juneau School District was able to take part in the Renewing America Schools grant. There was a little bit of uncertainty about kind of where and if that money was going to come through, but a part of that grant was to really focus on upgrading some of our HVAC systems, and really focus on, being more efficient with energy and seeing some savings in that regards. We just had, as part of that grant, the energy auditor come through. I think it was been about 2 weeks now, did a complete of the 5 buildings that are going to be seeing some of the resources from that. So we're moving forward for that, and hopefully we'll see some increases with efficiency for some of our facilities through some of the upgrades that are provided for that. We're also working through the CIP list to find some other efficiencies as well for some of our facilities. In regards to other efficiencies, as energy costs continue to go up, its costs continue to go up. We have to keep our buildings heated. Warm buildings, buildings that don't leak are very good for learning. Those are things that really help support student learning and comfort. And so we want to maintain those. And so some of the efficiencies, really are they're not able to be, I can't drop the degrees, 5 degrees to try to save a little bit of energy. I mean, there's things that we have to make sure that we maintain to find that peak optimum learning environment for our students. And we want to keep that. But where we can find and look at investing in potentially savings around especially efficiencies, we try to do that.
Mr. Brooks.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can you just give us a brief explanation of what the difference is between the energy line and utility service line on the expenditures by object, page 39?
I will turn that over to Ms. Herbert to go into more detail.
The mayor to Member Brooks, the state requires us to categorize certain energy and utility costs in different categories. And so when you're looking at utility services, you're more looking at heating oil, and then underneath energy, you're more looking at electricity and water. And to Members Kelly's question earlier, something that we actively look at, our director of operations, not director of operations, our operations manager monitors which some of our buildings can switch between heating oil versus electricity to heat, and is able to sometimes switch them to and from in order to do cost savings. So like we have those other levers that we're able to pull ourselves that doesn't require waiting for CIP and certain things to be fixed over. So that's where that may fluctuate between year to year, depending on where we're primarily heating our buildings. Utility services may go up where energy may go down.
Ms. Hall.
Looking at the historic enrollment, we have really high numbers of correspondence students. That's in our Homebridge program, correct?
That is correct.
Yeah, post-COVID.
That 210 right now, and we are anticipating that number to increase. We've been seeing some increased numbers, but yeah, that correspondence is in the Homebridge program, and we do receive funding for those students that are on our Homebridge program.
Yeah, and a follow-up to that would be, does the state track, like in our community, we have kids attending Raven and IEDA. Does the state track what community the kids are from that are attending those programs?
The state has tracked that information in the past. They don't always send that information out, and it's by program. So you'll get a report that'll show the number of students in the Juneau School District or not in the Juneau School District, but in the Juneau community that are at Raven or IDEA, one of the other homeschool programs, including our Homebridge program. They have sent out some of that information, and they do track that information. They don't always send it out to districts, though.
Okay, so we don't really have an idea of how many Juneau kids are attending. other
The last numbers I saw, we have about 530 students, a little bit over 500 students that are not that are correspondent students participating in a statewide correspondence program that live in the Juneau area that are not participating in the Juneau school districts. Sometimes I've heard people talk about 800, but they oftentimes forget that it's all statewide correspondence programs. Included in that number is our Homebridge program. So we actually have those students in our program. So anytime you look at correspondence students and those numbers of students that are participating in correspondence that are in the Juneau area, you can't forget to subtract the students that are in our homeschool program because they are our students.
Mr. Burks?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On the expenditures by function on the page 38 or page 12, the operations and maintenance, can you tell us how much of that is just maintenance, or what determines what is an operation and what is a maintenance?
Is he Herbert, sorry.
Through the mayor to Member Brooks, operation and maintenance is the general description that the state requires us to track, but it doesn't have us split it down further. So within that, that includes all of our custodial services. It includes all of our maintenance department. And that also includes all of our utilities that we pay to heat our schools and provide electricity, and any maintenance and repair.
Good.
Thank you. So would that 11 million number also encompass the part of the 400,000 or 2 million number for utility services or energy?
Yes, that's one of the few areas where that function 600 operation and maintenance directly ties to the object for 4,300 utility services and 4,350 energy. But not all of the objects tie up cleanly to a function.
So on page 39, what is transferred to other funds?
Madam Mayor, transfer to other funds are the general operating funds that are getting transferred to support our student transportation fund. So in addition to the money that we're receiving from the city and borough of Juneau, we are also transferring money to balance that projected deficit. And it also goes to our nutrition services special revenue fund. In addition to balancing that, the board has also elected to continue universal free breakfast, which is about $230,000.
Ms. Cullen, did you, oh, yes, you can't wave your hand. Ms. Hall.
Yeah, on page 33, where you're discussing proposed budget revenues, and under the other category, Medicaid reimbursement fell under that. And I'm wondering, are you currently only billing for students enrolled in special education services? Medicaid reimbursement, through like OT, PT, speech.
At this time, I do believe that we are only trying to capture the students that are in special education services receiving those reimbursable services. I can get confirmation on that and forward that on in the future just to make sure. I believe we have been looking at the possibility of expanding that, but at this time, I believe we are only capturing those students that are in special education.
Follow up?
Go ahead.
Yeah, and so knowing that nursing services could potentially be covered both inside and outside of students that qualify for special education services, I've heard that's a pretty decent source of revenue. So although recognizing that things are very unstable with that program right now federally, but
If I may, through the mayor, I think that in the budget, there's a support for our health services and our nurses that I think are going to provide more stability and provide more capacity for our lead nurse to explore some of those options that you're talking about. So that's one of the things we're looking forward to being able to potentially see more realized reimbursements because of some of the decisions the boards have made for the FY27 budget.
All right. Seeing nobody else, I'll continue. Congratulations on all your fund balances being in the black. Was a time when they were not. So you didn't bring that piece of paper with us. So if you could forward us to that at some point, that'd be great.
The audit.
Not the audit, just your fund balances.
Oh, the fund balances? Okay, yeah, we can
I
go
think you
ahead.
have like 5 or 6 funds, right?
We can get that to you. Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. You must explain things really well. All right. Go ahead, Ms. Hall.
I don't know if this is a question for our staff or for your staff, but over the years of flat funding of the BSA, what has shifted over to the CBJ that has traditionally been paid by under the BSA? What have we kind of taken on during that time that normally would have still been under the BSA?
If you can't take a stab on it, I can.
Why don't you start? Because I mean, I could take a stab, but I don't have necessarily history.
Pupil transportation, not initially when I was first on, and high school activities. Activities are definitely one. I think we always helped with rally at one time, community assistance and food. Go ahead.
Through the mayor to Member Hall, it's important to note that our funding for student transportation is based off enrollment. And when it's based off on enrollment, you still typically provide transportation to the same geographic area. And unless all of the students stop coming to school in a very specific area, it creates an issue in that you're still trying to provide transportation for this large group, even though you're getting less money because your student population is dwindling. And so a lot of districts are kind of running into that same issue and that they're trying to provide the same services over the same geographic area, but they only get funded on the enrollment, not the geographic area.
Yes, and we're also a linear town, so it just makes it more difficult. You can talk to our wastewater folks on that because they know all about linear towns with pipes. Quiet group. Okay, now discussion time. Oh, Mr. Brooks, sorry.
I was just wondering, if there's been any discussions that I wasn't present for in meetings or any desire amongst the school board or discussions related to the consolidation of building maintenance services with CBJ. Is that something that you've batted around, thinking of what the pros are, the cons are, or is it just something that's so far removed from your thoughts?
Go ahead, Superintendent Hauser, because we have discussed this in the past. And he squashed us.
Yeah, to the mayor.
A lot
to
you.
Member Brooks, yeah. During the consolidation, this was a conversation that came up, and really what was determined at the time, one of the conversations that took place is the high need that we have. And I mean, whenever you have maintenance needs, there's high needs, custodial needs, but maintenance specifically. But when we have a major maintenance need, we need people there right there at that moment to take care of what potentially is a safety issue for kids. And so, and we just can't send kids home. We need to make sure that we have dedicated staff to provide that service. And so, our maintenance staff are part of our JES union. We're really proud of the work that they do. They take care of our snow plowing. They take care of our, some of our grounds work. They do a lot of the maintenance, internal, external. And so they do so much around the district. And I think a couple of years ago when this conversation was happening, if I'm remembering correctly, so Madam Mayor, please feel free to correct me or add as needed. The conversation around potentially the city taking on the cost for maintenance also had an increase in the costs. So if the city were to take over the maintenance, it would only cover major maintenance. We would still have to figure out how to do snow plowing for all of our facilities or walkways and everything else. But the cost for the equivalent maintenance is, if my memory serves correct, would have actually been more expensive to the city to cover that. And so at the time, it just didn't, it didn't seem like it was cost efficient because it cost more money. And just to be frank, these are valued members of our staff that we wouldn't want to give up because they do such a great job for us. And it's so important that they are part of the Juneau School District and have immediate access as needed.
Yeah, and I'll just add, if I may, we were trying to be very creative with maintenance because that was one place that we thought we could, but Deed actually kind of squashed us too, because even though there are buildings, they fall under the umbrella of the school district. So then they were saying that, well, technically that should be under your cap then. And
yeah, that local contribution. Thank you.
we tried to be very creative, but that was a good point because we tried that too. Mr. Whitney, do you have something to add?
Yeah. So adding a little bit to what Superintendent Housing through the mayor, member Brooks. This came up quite a bit in facilities committee, and there's a pretty strong need for the maintenance people to be tied to the building administrators. So when things go wrong in the middle of the day, the principal needs to be able to direct these people. So that's a huge factor, just how things work efficiently.
Okay, if there's questions along the way, feel free to ask them, but now just more of the discussion time. If board members want to bring something forward, or if Assembly wants to bring something forward, now would be the time. Mr. Brooks, thank you for talking because everybody else isn't.
And it's really difficult for me to talk to, but this is a conversation, so I'm happy to. But I know that it's something that had been brought up through the DZ playground design process, and it's something that even got me thinking a lot. But the cost for the design inflated well over $100,000. It was redone 3 times. I have a hard time seeing what the true benefit to the community was from having a CBJ department charge a JSD such an exorbitant amount, making the project therefore just more expensive, taking longer. And just, wondering, like, how do we avoid things like that happening? Or is there some underlying benefit that I'm just not seeing? But it seemed to be a slight source of contention. So I don't know if that's something that the board can speak to, or if we have any ideas on the city side of why things like that happen.
Well, first of all, we have to pay our staff too, but I'll go to Mr. Smith.
I don't want to cut off a member of the board that might have a response. I believe an issue that happened there, at least that I was aware of, was I don't want to say that there wasn't a budget for the playground, but we maybe didn't have a good enough cap or a control. And I mean, I'll take responsibility when it came to public works and facilities, and I can't remember the number. It was it $2 million? I can't remember. It was significant. And then I made a motion to say, no, we're only going this high. And then I think that, that it maybe caused some issue with design because they had to rescope and redo more work. Anyway, and I think going forward, I've said it on a number of things. We should set it, there should be a budget set for some of these projects. So we don't get expectations up or, have to come back to the drawing board after people have done a lot of work. And anyway, that's my perspective on maybe an issue with how that project rolled out and was designed.
Anybody else want to comment on that? All I got that was Mr. Smith's fault. That's what I got. But yes, Mr. Burks.
Thank you. And I totally understand that, the departments need to get paid, staff needs to get paid, but, at what point, is it less beneficial to the process to charge certain amounts? Like, I guess, why charge ourselves so much to a point where it starts creating contention within a project, even though we're all on the same team, essentially? Is there a cap we can set on interdepartmental development charges just as a baseline to prevent things like this happening from across the board? But like I said, I understand people need to get paid, departments need to get paid, but that's one project at over $100,000, and just for a playground, how many projects are handled a year? And that's just where my mind kind of goes.
Yep, I will try, and then Mr. Barr can correct me, but typically designs are percentages of a project. And like Mr. Smith said, it was way more than most people on the assembly could stomach. And so that's why they had to redesign it. Mr. Barr, you can correct me if I'm wrong there, but.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't disagree with anything that's been said so far, Madam Mayor, by you or Mr. Smith. I think that when projects need based on public comment, public process, decisions that boards or assemblies make when projects need redesign efforts, that those redesigns add to and are multiplicative of existing design work. So I think this project was subject to that phenomenon.
I have Ms. Siddon and then Madam President.
Thank you. I was chair of the facilities committee through most of the development of that project, and I'll leave the budget piece aside, but to say, I hope that maybe in our joint facilities committee, we can hash out a better process for any joint projects in the future so that our dollars are put towards projects that best serve our kids.
Thank you for that. Madam President.
Thank you. I think I had something very similar along the lines of Dr. Siddon. So again, I think it was a rather rough process. And if there's a way to have maybe a better understanding of that flow or how the process should go, it would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
And I think Mr. Steininger is the chair of that committee. Is that correct? So you have marching orders. Ms. Thomas and then Ms. Wall.
So with the playground design, just how that went, we're looking at getting like new boilers for schools and stuff like that. And that's going to come through you guys as well. And so my concern is how that's getting marked up as, like, it seems like money's just transferring back and forth. I feel like there should either be like a cap or an agreement to how all of our dollars serve the whole community versus I feel like just, it doesn't look, I'm trying to think of the right word. I just don't think that it makes much sense to charge us to design a boiler that's going in a building that you guys technically own. So, I mean, paying for the boiler, that's one thing, but the design of what it needs to be, I just think that going that route, same with the playground, like staff is getting paid regardless. So we're charging school districts when we're already tight on our money.
Thank you for that, Ms. Wall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll maybe broaden the discussion here because I think that DZ playground for me was, sorry, the Dunskahini playground for me was indicative of a larger issue I feel like I've seen since I've been on the assembly, which is, to be frank, not great communication between these two bodies. And I'm not blaming anyone here for that. I think it's just we're all in our different spheres doing our own things that we have our authority to. And then when we try to talk or do things together, it's been challenging, even if we have shared values and, other things. So I'd be curious. I get to talk to my fellow assembly members a lot. I get to hear a lot about what works for them, but while I'm here with the school board, I'd love to hear from a few of you of kind of what you need from us, how we can better that communication. Any ideas or suggestions? We've got a lot of new people here, which I think is good.
Comments on that, Mr. Whitney?
Thank you. I'm through the mayor. So I wasn't part of the board, the process when the playground first started. But then I ended up being on chair of the facilities committee after Dr. Siddon stepped down. A couple of things that really stand out to me on that project is it was really traumatic for the two schools that ended up at Dunskahini. I mean, they got uprooted and moved there. And so there was a lot of intense feelings about that. And then in the community of Lemon Creek as a whole, you don't really want to have the lower economic groups all in one school because bad things tend to happen to the kids. So they get split up. Half of them go to Harborview and half of them go out to Costaguin. So they did have a school in their neighborhood and they lost it. And there was some intense feelings about that, and for good reasons. Like when you have desegregation, it was the black kids that had to be on the buses. Here it's the poorer kids and they don't get their own school. So it doesn't surprise me a bit that there were changes in the design on that. I mean, things can always be better, but sometimes I think just the intense background situation you end up walking in a no-win situation. And since I took over, there's still been animosity until just recently, but I mean, what the schools went through overall too, besides just that project, it's been pretty intense, and I think you can expect to have problems. Yeah.
Ms. Collins?
I think for especially as a new board member, for me, I think it would have been nice, just regarding this project, the bidding process, the way as it was explained to me as I was onboarding was very unclear. No one knew whether it was a city project or a school district project. I've spoken with some of the project managers on the city. They tried to explain their role. But having done construction for years, the bidding process seems odd to me. And so that's something that I think when you're asking what would help us as a board, at least for me, would be maybe not like how it is now. We were told this is the amount and now we're going to go out to bid versus like we're bidding. These are our things. How much money do we need, which is a typical bidding process. So like explaining that. I know for that project, we didn't really get any say on the playground equipment that's going to be there. So little things like that, I think that's the kind of communication that we need from the city and the board so we can all know where we're at in the project, who's making decisions for which components of the project and what we're responsible for.
Okay, that sounds good. That's interesting because we certainly didn't pick the playground equipment, so I'm not quite sure who did. Must have been a committee of something else because we certainly didn't pick playground equipment.
Well, neither did we.
Well, I'm going to clarify. I'm sorry, Madam Mayor, if I could. I'll clarify that a little bit. There was a design company that was chosen that brought options to that school's community to gather feedback. So there was some input that was had that was probably now over a year and a half-ish, somewhere in there. So I mean, it's been some time, but there was a mechanism for some input at that time from those schools that were in that building.
Anything else on that topic? And there's other topics we certainly could talk about. Yeah.
I have a comment.
Ms. Fromers.
I guess for me, the
Madam
lesson.
Clerk.
I guess I'll just say the lesson learned is the challenge of using a third party vendor for something for a project in which that they have the expertise in, how much trust you put into that. And I think a lesson for me is, so we're hoping there's not going to be and we might be experts now of playgrounds, but there's going to be another project and there's going to be another vendor in which that we have to do our due diligence to vet like what they're bringing to the table. And I guess adding more specificity, including a budget at the get-go of where that project is going to go to keep it reined in, is something that I'm taking because as a lesson from this experience. And it's probably my second experience in terms of playgrounds, but just not having, because a vendor will sell you the bells and the whistles and they sound good because they'll be like, oh, it's certified. But then all the nooks and crannies that it takes to be certified, we don't have that luxury in Alaska because of the season and the ground and the thawing and the timing and the shipping. And so those are things I think would be helpful. Like you almost need an expert to work with the vendor of the expert of like how to procure and obtain services here in Alaska is just something that I'm going to take away from this experience. And from a distance as a board member who was with this project, but not as closely as some of my colleagues. Thanks.
Thank you for that. Anything further? Any other, Madam President?
I have a list.
Oh, good. Bring it on.
One of the things that we have had a few conversations about recently is, and this kind of ties in maybe to some of this discussion, is a facilities assessment. I believe there was one done, and I'm going to look to board member Thomas to help me out on this. I think that there is an old one, and so maybe having an updated assessment of the district facilities.
And what is that? Tell me what you mean by your assessment.
Ms. Thomas, would you
Ms.
chime in,
Thomas.
please?
The name is blanking me right now, but they went through and looked at all of our facilities and looked at their efficiencies, looked at their capacity, looked at how they would best be used in the district. And I believe you guys had them do a quick assessment right before consolidation happened as well, like a quick and down and dirty. They didn't come up and do it. And I don't know if we want to use that same company again, just because they're familiar, but it would just help us have a better idea of, are we using our facilities to the best of their ability? Like what needs to be done? They did safety assessments. They did, everything you could think of. And I can send you the assessment. Do you know the name of that company?
Just so you know, we did not do the assessment, so I'm assuming
was a
the
joint.
city. Okay, I don't even remember asking for an assessment, so was that our staff?
Well, it was a
Mr. Whitney.
Yeah, so it was 2017. It was a joint assembly school district.
Committee, which we have.
Which we did.
It hasn't
I
met yet.
think you might have been on, I was on it, Jesse Keel was on it, Wade Bryson was on it, and Brian Holst was on it. But we, and I think Jensen Yorba Lot was the contractor who'd put it, and it was on, and they brought in other contractors who were experts in education. And it was, the most useful thing to me is they made maps of every school,
But-
all the classrooms.
Was that the study they did when we were trying to see if there was extra room in the school for other things?
That's the
Okay,
one,
now I'm remembering.
But it is, a lot of the information in it is stale, so it's, and especially the finance and the maintenance cost. And so there probably is value in
Okay, well, I'm gonna look at Mr. Steiniger and say, I don't know who's on the joint committee from the school district right now, but we should get a meeting going.
We have one scheduled.
Perfect. Glad to hear. And who's on that committee?
Assembly wise, I think it's Mr. Brooks, Mr. Kelly,
And myself.
and yourself. Yep.
Yep. And then
Sorry, I
for the
forgot
school
you.
District, Madam President. Okay, there you go. All right,
And I believe we have a deadline to get that agenda put together. So, Ms. Choni Haywood, let's touch base.
or who's ever chair of your facilities committee too. Could be part of that discussion. Are you chair of that?
Oh, I do not chair any of the subcommittees. Thank you.
Smart lady.
special committee that you gotta be in charge of.
Joint committee, yes.
Okay, continue on your list.
Oh.
No one else is raising their hand, so.
Oh, this wasn't even really my list, but, so one of the other things that had been posed, is kind of around the flood mitigation and what our responsibilities are with, MRCS.
I'm gonna look to Mr. Barr for that one because I have no idea. Are they part of the emergency plan and do the, obviously they don't seem to know their role, or do other people in the school district know their role and it just hasn't made it
Well,
to the
and
school board?
I think part of it too is like with the fencing and some of those pieces, like, is that our responsibility or, making sure it's there and in place? I mean, it's a safety issue for the children in that school, so.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So I guess I'll start by saying that when we're in the midst of flood response, we're certainly quick to reach out to the superintendent's office when we have any needs, either as part of the emergency response effort, or if we have needs to, be on school property to either use that property as part of the response or to be on property to protect that property. I'm not familiar specifically with the fencing at MRCS. I am familiar last year that we did some protective work in culverts, either on or very close to MRCS property to keep water out of MRCS. But I would view flood protection of public property, broadly speaking, as something that we prioritize in emergency response generally.
I'll look to my other board members if I can to see if there's additional questions on this topic.
Listen,
I'm sure Ms. Jermaine here, because she could speak to it better, but back in like the September, October facilities committee meetings, we were briefed on flood mitigation, the fencing, the bank stabilization, and eventually the driveway into MRCS that we will be responsible for out of our maintenance costs. That I asked the question back then and still have not gotten a clear answer on, like, why isn't that just under the umbrella of the city flood mitigation response? Why are we paying separately for impacts of the flood to the building?
could you share us with what the impacts were of the flood? I didn't know there was any impacts to MRCS. Mr. Whitney?
Yeah, and like Dr. Sid mentioned, the biggest one that dwarfs the others is the bank stabilization to keep the driveway going into the school from going into the river, so. And there was some tree cutting and it was, like Dr. Sid said, it was unclear what our role and everybody's roles was to
Okay,
district
we'll
staff.
have to button that up. Mr. Brooks?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And yeah, I'm sure that there's definitely some worries with the erosion on that entrance of Mendenhall River School too. Not only did it damage the fence, but it is getting close to the entrance. And I was just wondering if on the school board, there's been any thoughts of reestablishing the old entrance on the other side of the property. And in that way might give you a little more grace time to figure out what we all can do for the reinforcement of the banks and the fencing without having to worry about the entrance aspect of the school too.
Thoughts?
Sorry, I found the slides. It's almost $1 million in total project cost between the bank stabilization and all the flood, 2 bullets of flood mitigation at MRCS, 700 for one and 225 for another.
Thoughts on looking at the other entrance, why we figure this out? Mr. Whitney, are you raising your hand?
Yeah, so on that, we didn't talk about it, they're through the mayor. And I believe Ms. Germain, and I might be wrong on this, but there's a good chance that I'm not. I mean, the Army Corps of Engineers, they were kind of the ones pushing the bank stabilization. They thought that would work, but whose responsibility it was and where the funding comes from. I think there was a lot of confusion on that angle.
Okay, Ms. Thomas?
I think regardless if we move the entrance or not, we still have to repair the bank with the fence that fell down. Like that's a huge safety concern with kids getting out and getting to, even if the entrance is gone, the fence is gone. That goes right to the river. And that's a huge concern of mine.
I can't speak to it anymore because we'll have to have the staff look at it and figure it out. I mean, we can't come up with an answer for that right now. We hear you. How about that? Yeah, send it to the committee. Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for entertaining the topic.
Yeah.
Just
Go ahead, Ms. Sidden.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, as we're joking about sending things to the committee, I do want to point out, circling back to the Zontakini Playground, that committee is not a decision-making body.
Yeah.
And then the last thing on my list, if we're moving on, was just to have a conversation, a discussion about kind of the partnership in after-school childcare and kind of thoughts and where we are on that.
I can speak a little bit to that. As far as I know, there is a private company working now, but they're only out of 3 schools. There was something brought forward, but looking at my assembly, because I don't know, because the deadline has passed. The last I knew, they were looking for a sponsor. Did anybody sponsor that project? Seeing none, I'm guessing they didn't get a sponsor.
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Smith?
Yeah, I'll give you an update. I've been speaking to some members who've been advocating for the funding for this after-school care and summer school-aged care. And the decision and thought was that the community grants would take too long. So we're evaluating a possible ordinance, so. But we'll see how that
Although
goes.
I don't know that everybody knows that, and just so you know, we told the people that were bringing it forward that, at least I didn't speak for myself now, I didn't think that rose to something that was out of our regular grant things, and they were supposed to go get a sponsor, but it doesn't look like they did. Ms. Wall and then Mr. Kelly.
You just said this, so, but I'll say it in a different way. For the group here, this has not come before the body, and so some of us have no information on this, and so there's some speaking in code. Some of us cannot answer your questions.
Sorry about that, but that was what we told the people that were bringing it forward, was to go find a sponsor, so it could come before the body, and it doesn't look like they found a sponsor, so I'm not saying it's a dead issue, but it's going to be more of uphill. Mr. Kelly.
Thank you. I think I wonder if I might have spoken with some of the same people as Mr. Smith. There was some interest in using some of the money that was forwarded. Instead of using the Assembly's grants process, that was being returned from the school district back to the Assembly and using that as a funding source. So that's not something I've asked a few questions of staff, but I haven't moved on, and maybe there's other assembly members working on it.
Mr. Sorry, Ms. Thomas. So we have a grant program, and the way we do our process now is if anybody wants money from our grant program, which is basically asking for money for anything, you have to find a sponsor from the assembly before it can go. Yep, sponsors it, yep. And we talked to, it was coming from the chamber, and we talked to them 3 weeks ago or something. And we told them to find a sponsor. They did say, can this go outside of your normal thing? Because as Mr. Smith said, they thought it would have to be sped up. And again, I was speaking for myself, made that quite clear that I didn't know that this arose to being outside of our normal process. So we'll see what happens if they want to keep bringing it forward. We'll have to see if they, like I said, like Mrs. Wall said, a lot of the assembly hasn't even heard of this yet, so it hasn't come before the whole body. Ms. Sin,
Question on your concern on a timeline was to implement expanded childcare options for this summer. When I spoke with the group, I was concerned because on the school district side, we are already deep in the process of what our buildings are going to be hosting this summer. So I wasn't sure even like logistically it was possible, but could we be looking at the grant process for the fall? I mean, is there, I don't know your timeline well enough.
we only do our grant process once during our budget season.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. But go ahead.
On that, I was actually going to ask if, you know, we saw the resolution that came from the school board about the proposal. I was going to ask that this is the space available to, you know, my understanding is it would expand from 20 to 60 students at 3 sites. I mean, does that space exist for the summer?
Again, that's a Chris Germain question. I don't know.
Depending on if I may through the mayor, I think that we would have the availability. We are scheduling summer work. A lot of the summer usage is, of course, deep cleaning and cycling through, making sure that our facilities are ready for the fall. But if we knew we could plan and we could see about finding some space, we're looking at maybe 1 or 2 classrooms in a couple buildings, 1 building. We want to support, you know, what is seen as one of the high needs around the community. And so we would definitely work to try to make space available in locations that were identified that would support that after-school childcare option. So while we would have to look at it, I feel pretty confident saying that we would find a way to make it happen because we know it's a high need.
Appreciate that. And we did tell the group bringing it forward that they need to contact the school district, so it doesn't sound like they did. So they need to do some homework. So it just hasn't been before the whole body, and I'm not sure what the mechanism will be at this point, so. Go ahead, Ms. Sid.
Well, I think this is a great example, right? We weren't coordinated enough for the Zontakini playground. We're not coordinated enough right now on it. I mean, are we disagreeing that childcare is an important option, or are we saying we functionally don't know how to even have that conversation? Because what I hear us saying is like, we don't even know how to bring a topic before this body. What is this meeting if not the opportunity to bring a topic before this body and figure out if we can make it happen? Do we think it's a priority? And if so, what's the next step?
So again, as Ms. Wall pointed out, this wasn't brought before our body. It was brought to a couple of us. We told them what they had to do. Yep, so.
Well, but that's so, but right, if any member of this community wants to bring something forward, they come to somebody and they say, how do I do this? So the people who came to you, did they leave with a clear path forward of what to do next? It doesn't.
Yes, they did.
I would guess they disagree with that. From my conversations with them, they're confused on like what they were supposed to do.
Okay, so the whole thing is the chamber brought it forward. I'm sorry for throwing you out there. They had Blue Scheibler bring it up. I called her personally and said, this seems, because at that time it was $480,000. And I said, that seems very, very steep. And she said, no, did you see my paperwork? And so she sent me her paperwork and it was more like 200 something thousand. And I said, that's a little bit better, but you still have to find a sponsor. So she knew they had a sponsor. The chamber people knew they had a sponsor. And the fact that they didn't go get a sponsor, I'm not sure if it was if they had figured out that the idea was totally baked, if you will. So remember, we have lots of people that bring stuff to us and they have to do a little bit of work. Ms. Wall first because I chopped her off. So, but again, without going through our grant process, the rest of the body doesn't know anything about it. So go ahead, Mr.
Okay.
Smith.
So as I've been talking with this group, I said, I mean, my advice to them was going through the grant process, while it might be better procedurally in terms of the understanding of the timeframe that they're wanting to work on, an ordinance is better. And I'm working to find a couple friends. I've also had to evaluate the project. I see if it's the best use of funds. I mean, anyway, all childcare is good anyway, but we also know we have limited amount of funds. There's details that for the, things you have to consider as we're looking at, but I'm kind of looking at like introducing an ordinance to bring forward to the assembly that may move more quickly, but and I don't know how you fix the communication piece.
I don't know how to do that either because we think we communicate pretty well what our process is for grants, and I know that they know, because I know that I'm not going to call out the people that approach us. They're very familiar with our grant program. So I would guess that things just fell through the cracks. And another way to do it is if Mr. Smith wants to bring an ordinance forward, potentially we can bring it forward, and figure out where the rest of the assembly feels on it. Is that what you're looking for, Madam President?
I was just looking for a conversation, Madam Mayor,
So
and I don't have anything else on my list.
there you go. So my question back with you guys is if we did that, are you guys looking at us to fund the whole thing ourselves? I'm asking. Ms. Thomas.
I'm only a party of one, but it would make sense that we would have to ask you guys because we did away with Rally because we couldn't find staff and couldn't afford to put it in our budget. So yeah, I would assume that we would want 100% participation. I mean, childcare is a huge need in the community and.
Okay, and just so you know, this was a one-time funding that they were talking about. Ms. Collum, did you have your hand raised? Sorry.
Yes, I just wanted to, for clarification, we or another organization doesn't need to come to you if you want to do an ordinance. That's just something the assembly member does on their own? Okay, thank you.
It's always wise if the assembly member talks to a couple people, though,
I mean,
to make sure they have some friends to make sure it's going to move forward. Because we could have lots of ordinances introduced and they don't get very far, as I'm sure you guys do too. Madam President, I like that, just so you know.
Yeah, I was just on the question of kind of costs. I mean, our current structure is Rally is out of our budget, so there isn't really anything at this point in time. We do have, I think a very generous lease for the vendor that's currently participating in our buildings. I would imagine something similar could be offered, but there isn't anything at this point in time as far as additional funding, I don't think.
Yep, and I was just asking to try to bring the communication to a head so we know when we talk about this, it will just be assembly funded. So that's why I asked the question.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
I wasn't necessarily trying to get money from you guys, which is really our money anyway, right? Okay, anything else?
Just had.
Ms. Fromhurst.
I guess my question is just to confirm so I know that the grant process it's one time a year or?
It's right. It's during our budget process.
Okay.
And if people want us to fund things, they have to find an assembly sponsor. and we can blame Ms. Wall for this, but it's worked out very well. So we're very happy to have this because we would get a whole bunch of funding requests that we know that we would never have touched. So now you have to find an assembly sponsor so it can be brought forward. But that deadline, just so you know, has passed. So it's too late for them to find a sponsor. Mr. Whitney and then Mr. Steininger.
Okay, I'll start it on my list now then, I guess.
Go
I've
ahead.
only got a couple of things. So just in light of bringing ideas and conversation to the joint committee here. First, I mean, the very first thing, Madam Mayor, that you brought forward was our lack of our declining enrollment. And this is, I mean, this is something that impacts us in a bad way as well as the city. And we're definitely a sort of a symbiotic organization. But I just want people to be aware that another symbiotic organization of this is the university. And I don't have any suggestions, but I just wanted people to be aware that they've recently offered in-state tuition to out-of-state students, and they've initiated the Common App, and it's looking very promising about bringing more people in. And I mean, there's going to be a 5, 10, 15 year, at least 15 year for the school district before that produces kindergartners. But I mean, people talk about the Coast Guard cutter, but in my mind, that's probably our best hope of stabilizing this declining enrollment problem. And just so people are aware of it, and it's not really in our purview, but if it does come up and there's an opportunity for us to help or be supportive, I just wanted people to be aware of that.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Mr. Whitney, because we have a lot of people that stay after going to UAS.
Yeah,
So,
myself included.
okay, before your next topic though,
Okay.
we take turns.
Okay.
Mr. Steininger, we'll come back to you.
All right, I just wanted to confirm an answer that I heard earlier when Deputy Mayor Smith asked how much, or maybe it was actually you, Mayor Weldon, how much would be left in your fund balance after the 5.7 million drawn? I think I heard about 1.5 million. Is that correct? So kind of thinking forward in the sustainability of your operating budget, you know, if we lose that 5.7 million draw, you only have 1.45 to go to, call it $1 million, $1.5 million in inflationary pressure in the next year. Kind of where does this leave us? You know, how prepared does this budget make the school district looking forward, especially facing decline in enrollment and probably a decline in revenue and a widening gap? Like how confident are we that we are setting ourselves up for kind of longer term success with the proposal that we're looking at? And this can go to kind of, I mean, there's a big policy discussion. I'm not necessarily just putting this on you, Superintendent Hauser. Just curious to kind of have that conversation.
Ms. Herbert.
Through the mayor to Member Steinberg. We've had lots of good conversations in the several meetings since January about how we want to make sure we're fiscally responsible. We're not making unnecessary cuts. Unfortunately, we know that even though we are an organization of people, that we don't fill all of those positions. And so we incur vacancies. And even though we hire substitutes or have to contract out with third parties, it does tend to provide a cost savings to the district. And so we talked about whether or not we wanted to project a vacancy rate going into 27, or if we wanted to, as we go into 27, as we have been in the past budget cycles, look at what the actual vacancy rates are providing in that year to then increase our fund balance to help balance the 28 budget. And so that was the conversation that we had with the Board of Education. And as it relates to the vacancy rate, we know that we're going to have it. So even though we budgeted 100% fill rate, come this fall, we'll be able to look at to see what our initial vacancies are looking like and monitor that starting in August and September and have very good ideas of what we think that will create for next budget cycle. The second piece of that we had good discussions on was our health insurance. Previously, the district has always budgeted that 100% of our employees will participate in our health insurance plan, but that hasn't been the case. And so this year, we decided to strategically use a 10% health insurance waiver rate to help reduce that budgeted expense, because we know that hasn't been typically the case. And so being able to then in the fall look at, okay, we're assuming potentially 10% of our employees aren't going to participate in health insurance. What do we actually see that is? And we'll have great ideas come September and August of what those bigger dollar amounts are that will then add to that fund balance. So if we go into next year with 1.7 million, we know that that is going to bounce back up again because of those vacancies we're anticipating, unfortunately, and additional health insurance waive rates.
Go ahead, follow up, and I can follow up too.
Yeah, so the budget that we're looking at, the 81 million, that's assuming 100% fill rate for all your teaching positions. You know, what does that draw look like if you have more of a normal fill rate of kind of comparable to what you saw this year? You know, does that draw completely disappear, or is it like $1 million draw, or what does it look like?
You pulled your microphone closer, so I thought you were. The number from fiscal year 25 stands out more to me than what we're currently seeing in 26. So I will say in 25, the total amount of vacancies that were used to balance the 26 budget was about $4 million.
So let me put that in other words. So you're potentially looking at only drawing $1 million from your fund balance if all that occurs, rather than the 5. Okay.
I think I've been using the metaphor of like the glacier outburst because that's very unique to Juneau in that July 1, we'll have balanced our budget on $5.7 million and we'll have the glacier outburst happen and our fund balance will be kind of depleted. And then throughout the school year, we'll actually realize what our health insurance waivers are. We'll realize what our actual 27 vacancies are and our fund balance will start growing again to then come August of 2027, another outburst of fund balance use.
Okay, and are we hopeful at all that we're going to get more BSA from the state? Ms. Atkinson, where are you?
So I think to kind of tag on to that, balancing a budget off of prior year fund balance is not without risk, which I think maybe is in part what you're getting at. So if we do have those higher vacancies, if we have a higher health insurance participation, any number of other factors that could impact those numbers and what that fund balance is that we are currently utilizing to meet next year's budget, at some point could become problematic. There could be a fiscal cliff. Now, again, trying to manage that, making sure, we're not using fund balance from this past year and also factoring in a healthy vacancy rate. We've chosen to do one basically or the other and not both within a single year budget.
Mr. Kelly.
Thank you. I didn't have a list, but I feel a little inspired from the conversation about communication that we were having. I mean, this joint committee meets once a year usually. I wouldn't necessarily, I'd probably lose a few friends on both bodies if I tried to pile on more meetings. And I think the solution is probably also not piling on a bunch of more topics into Mr. Steininger's lunchtime meeting, 1 hour long meeting. But I am also thinking about the liaison assignment. As the assembly, we do have a liaison. I think this year it's Mr. Brooks. I was, I guess, kind of wondering if maybe there's an opportunity to use that role a little differently. I think at this point, we usually just send Mr. Brooks or whoever our liaison is for the year to observe meetings, but maybe there's an opportunity to realize that role in a different way. And also on the topic of communication, I want to note that Ms. Fromhertz did reach out to me a couple of weeks ago with the text message, and I'd like to open that up as a possibility. Any other school board member, especially those who I've served with in the past, are welcome to reach out to me at any time.
She reaches out to me too. The- And anybody is welcome to reach out to any one of us, I mean, on the school board, so. Yeah. Mr. Whitney, we'll come back to you. Sorry, I didn't want you to think I forgot you.
Yeah, so I'd one more discussion topic I wanted to bring up, and it had to do, it was to the mayor. Mr. Kelly mentioned earlier about efficiency potentials. And this was something that we discussed last time I was in the board. And the idea was to explore sort of a zone heat pump for the whole JDHS through Harborview complex of buildings. And back then it was mostly school district buildings with the university. And now it's a mix of cities, university and school district buildings. But the idea was, instead of having boilers and furnaces, that just put in a single heat pump into the channel and heat the whole complex. And it died because the heat zone was in play, and for that project to go forward, all the public buildings had to be customers. So until the zone heating actually, so it died because of the zone heating potential. But I think that's probably not going to happen at this point. I think it's safe to say so. It's probably a topic worth exploring again to maybe hook all that. There's a lot of square footage there, and we burned a fair amount of oil, I think, and it's probably worthwhile to add that to your committee meeting and add to your 1 hour lunch. So, just a broad thought that I wanted to bring back up to put in people's mind again. That's the end of my list. I only have two
Okay.
things.
I'm looking at you skeptically on that one, but because we would rely on the private, and that has pretty much has not moved forward at all, so. Anybody else? Oh, you have two over there, Mrs. Collum and then Mr. Brooks.
I don't want to get anyone's hopes up, but one of the things when you asked if we thought there was going to be any change with the BSA, I am looking at that, but there's also some legislation that's they're discussing about correspondence schools. And if that ends up happening, that would be all of those students who are outside of our district, all of those funds would then be part of our funding source. So that is something I am looking forward to. I think it's 422 or 442 House bill. I'm really curious to see where that goes. So when we're looking at funding, I think there's potential, but I don't know where it will
Thank you for
actually
that. I
happen.
had not heard about that one.
Yeah,
so.
I just got an email about it today, so.
There you go. Mr. Brooks.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And it was just two parts. One is to like the communication side, kind of what Assemblymember Kelly was talking about, and just my role in the liaison's position. There have been multiple instances where you guys have discussed, let's reach out to the city and see where they're at in this. A lot of those times you can ask me, like I'm part of it there, and there's been multiple instances where I do have a little bit of input for you guys on that and stuff, and feel free to ask me anytime. It's like, hey, we have our liaisons from the city. Let's see if they've talked about this at all. And I tune into every single meeting. So I'm there as a resource for you guys as well. And then to Board Member Whitney's mention on the district heating, I'm a huge fan of heat pumps and would like to see them all over the community. And I think that there definitely is an efficiency to be had for doing a mini split system on municipal buildings, but it gets lost a little more when you talk about the ground source heat pumps because of the costs associated, so it's like it definitely is worth it for an efficiency standpoint, but specifically for the ground source, definitely looking at other options that are a little more cost prohibitive.
Ms. Siddon.
Thank you. I'm wondering if Mr. Senator has terms of reference for the Joint Facilities Committee, and could you share it with all of us ahead of our meeting?
Terms of reference.
This is my concern. I mean, as long as I've been on this board, no one's been quite clear on the purpose of that committee. So while we've all joked and assigned you a long agenda, the Zontakini Playground is a great example where clearly we don't understand how that committee works. So before we design an agenda and meet, it might be best if we agreed on terms of reference.
Yeah. So the committee meets as needed. You know, the meeting that is scheduled for 30th or 31st. 30th or 31st at noon. 31st, thank you. That was kind of instigated by discussions in our budget process as the assembly regarding bonding and whether or not to put a school bond debt package on the ballot this fall. And in order to have that discussion, you know, we have to have that meeting is kind of how we inform that. So the committee,
Facilities committee. Not a separate committee of the school board.
it's a joint committee between the school board and CBJ Assembly.
Yeah, but our joint committee is with, you know,
And maybe I can clarify here. So when I was tasked to have this committee meeting on the bonds, I reached out to President Choni Haywood and Superintendent Hauser saying, you know, I've been tasked with having this meeting, you know, this is the topic. You know, it's kind of not my responsibility to schedule a facilities committee meeting for the school board. So my assumption is the school board, you know, through the president will have that discussion as a school board to, you know, if you need to come to some kind of agreement on your own before you come to the joint meeting, or if we want to just have that discussion in the joint meeting. But, you know, kind of that is the process, you know, the committee meeting happens, it informs to folks and we work through that process.
go ahead, Mr. Whitney.
Yeah, through the mayor, Dr. Sidden. So, I mean, the district can't, we have no way to raise money. We can't issue bonds. The city has authority to do that. So the facilities committee is an internal school district body. And it was brought forward to the facilities committee because we do put together the CIP list. And we went over that in the facilities committee because in light of this, the request from the city to meet on the bonding issue. And so we put that from the facilities committee, we put that information in the board packet. And we asked the board members to look over that and give input. But the process for issuing bonds, working with the city, is through this joint committee. So it's not the facilities committee. The facilities committee has no authority to.
Maybe this helps him and maybe this helps him, maybe it doesn't. So if the committee talks about bonds and either side doesn't think they move forward, then it stops. But if both sides think it moves forward, then it goes to you guys and it comes back to the body because you're correct. They are not a decision-making committee. And then the assembly and the school board differently decide whether to move forward on that.
For kind of clarity, I think my understanding was it was that joint committee that would meet with the assembly. I mean, that's why we have the separate joint committee within the school board structure.
But we talked
And-
about bonds and facilities. So
Right.
why is a subset of us meeting with the assembly about
Because
bonds?
that's what we've done in the past, to have both sides meet as a smaller group. So we don't have to have continual joint meetings, but we want to have continual joint meetings, we can do that too.
Just requesting terms of, I'll go back to that request.
But I'm not
and
sure what that,
articulate
do you mean agenda? Do you mean agenda topics? I don't know what you
what-
mean.
Even what kinds of topics this assemblage of three of each of us would talk about. Yeah, like, yeah. What decision-making authority did you have on the playground? Is that even, why is that, do you talk about, I would think you would talk about joint facilities projects at that committee, and yet that process we've all identified didn't work. So I'm asking, before we meet again on another project, that we outline what that committee is going to do, and that both bodies, all members of both bodies, understand the authority of that subset of three of us. Because that has not been clear in the past.
Yeah. To be fair, I don't think the joint committee met about the playground.
Yeah, you did. And you,
Sure
and
did.
you agreed the
It's-
school district would buy the equipment, which only three of you cannot decide to do.
So anyway. Ms. Wall.
Can I make a motion to ask our staff both, and you guys can tell me if this is where you want to go with this, JSD and CBJ staff to bring us back a proposal on how we, a clearer process for working together on facilities issues and bring that to the committee as a starting place.
Okay, and I do think it's mentioned in our rules and procedures, just so you know. Is that a formal motion there, Madam?
I'm looking at whether anyone is interested around here in doing that. I know we don't have authority to make a decision tonight as a group, but I would say if you object and say that's not a good way forward, then we can drop it and pick it up another day.
Any questions, comments, thoughts?
If there is some reference in,
You have something.
yeah, I don't think that I've seen that. So that would be useful for me in this role.
Okay.
If there's some sort of rules or governing document or
It's
something.
very, like 3 or 4 lines, so it's not a
Okay.
big deal. I will take some of this credit because when I was on the assembly, this didn't meet much. And what was problematic then is we would go through our CIP process and then the school district would say, oh, we need something like this. And so it wasn't in our CIP process. So my thought was, why I initially got this fired back up was, let's work, which we did for a few years and it went well. And COVID probably killed it, is where it probably died a little bit, is we came up with projects that you guys needed that we could get into our CIP. So that's where we did 3 roofs and I think a couple boilers. So it did work, good work then. And then I think COVID kind of hit it and we've never quite caught the stride back up. So that's what we were initially planning. So my only problem, I'll talk, Ms. Wall, is I'd rather not have staff do it. I would rather have us do it.
That's fine. This feels like a hard way to do anything. So that was my idea, was to kick it back to somebody to make a straw dog. If someone here wants to volunteer to work on something, that would work for me too. I just think this is hard by committee without something on paper, at least for me.
Maybe this committee doesn't work and Ms. Siddon has a different thought process of what we should do differently. I'm open to that.
Well, it didn't work for me for the Zontakini playground.
You have to use the mic.
It didn't work for me for the Zontakini playground.
There's more to that story than what we'll get into tonight.
That is all I've heard all night tonight, is there's like a bunch of things people don't know anything about. If we're going, I mean, maybe I'm walking away from this with a real unclear understanding of how communication works between these two bodies.
Not very well, apparently. Okay, well, I'll just throw it out.
No plan to do anything about it.
No, we're open to suggestion. We're trying, but so I'm speaking for myself here and not the body, because there were some members that were here and some members that weren't. I think I feel that we got blindsided by the Zontakini playground at a very huge price, and we were told that we were paying for it. And that's, I think, where it started to go downhill from there. And then especially a certain former member of your body kept telling us that we promised $1 million and most of us hadn't even heard of it yet. That was very troubling. And that's where it came to the Public Works Committee. And that's when Mr. Smith said, I think we need to cut the price tag down. And so it was a difficult topic to go through. So Mr. Whitney.
Yeah,
and
on this
Mr.
one, I mean, through the mayor, I mean, Dr. Sid, and then this case that we're on March 31st that we're meeting on, the city brought forward the possibility of issuing bonds. And in facilities, we revisited our CIP list. And then, I mean, we were informed that that's why we were doing it, because this was happening. And then we presented that at the last board meeting. It's in our packet, and everybody, board member was encouraged to look at that in light and give comment to the committee members before this March 31st meeting. And it all seemed pretty clear to me. I'm not really sure how we can make that more transparent, or, I mean, to me, it's pretty, I don't understand what's not working there. I mean. Ms. Fromers?
I'm assuming that, Madam Walls, motion is still on the table. I would second it. I think.
We
what
we don't
need-
second and we would be two different
Okay.
lines.
I'm so used to saying that.
But thank you, Madam Clerk.
Like I guess I'm just wondering how we can move forward with a plan of communicating. Speaking to where Member Whitney has mentioned the intent and his clarity, I'm just wondering, I guess a signal for me, thinking back to the last meeting, a signal to me would be like, would the liaison, would CBJ be sitting at the table having to unpack the question and the request? It's just a simple action and trigger. I don't know, it's something that I'm thinking, but we have to figure out how we're going to communicate otherwise, because we can't have another playground debacle.
I would agree. And yes, I apologize, Ms. Wall, your motion is on the table. So we'll deal with that right now. Appreciate your seconding, but we don't second, and you can't vote on our motion. Mr. Smith,
Would
you
you,
want
would you
wanna
remind me,
speak to,
would you remind me what the motion was again?
Ms. Wall, would you repeat your motion?
I would move to direct CBJ staff to work with JSD staff on a proposed process for both bodies to better communicate and make decisions about JSD facility projects. Joint projects.
All right,
And-
so I appreciate everybody wanting to jump on this, but it's our member and we'll have to vote. So if you guys want to follow up with your own vote, that would be perfect, but I don't know that a mixed vote is going to work. So any objection? Mr. Steininger, I think you're objecting for the purposes of a question.
Yeah, I guess I'm trying to understand a little bit better. So a process for communication when we're dealing with projects outside of the normal budget process?
I mean, I don't even know the answer to that question, which speaks to, after 6 years, how confusing it is when we work on a project that is we're supposed to be communicating together about. And so, so I'd like some clarity on that.
Follow up?
Go ahead, Mr. Steininger.
I'm kind of struggling to think of within the, kind of bounds of our normal government process of refer to committee, committee does work, committee refers back to assembly. What other than that basic process are you looking for, I guess, is what I'm
Ms.
asking.
Wall.
What I would expect, that's a helpful question for me, is right now the assembly has their process and the school board has their process, and never the twain shall meet. How do those processes work together? And then things happen on the staff side that I really don't understand. And so I think they can help us with our governance processes and how they interact, even if it's just explaining how it currently works, is supposed to work. But also, on their side, that's where I think a lot of the confusion is for us. Sometimes we know they're talking, but we don't understand how you guys approach those things. So some framework would be helpful for me. And I am just throwing out ideas here based on this conversation. So we could put a pin on it to get more specifics later.
Okay, Mr. Steininger, you have an objection for purposes of question. Are you still asking questions?
No, I guess I'm hearing like a table in a demilitarized zone between the two bodies to come to and have conversations. I'll remove my objection. I see.
Mr.
Yeah.
Kelly, you had your hands up.
Yeah, also for the purposes of the question, I guess where would it be, for the maker of the motion, where would your intention be for them, for staff's input to go? Would it go to a specific committee, or is that just kind of left open at this point?
Good question.
What
Mr.
I
Kelly.
think would be great is for it to go to the joint committee, knowing that when you guys come up with the proposal, it may be that it's supposed to go somewhere else, but we already have a body that is supposed to meet together. And so that seems like the right place to take that proposal.
I'll remove my objection.
Okay, anything further from the assembly? Mr. Brooks?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd object for the purpose of an amendment. I
Go ahead.
definitely like the desire and want to do that, but I think getting a working group with a couple assembly members, a couple of the board members and city staff to do an update on what the rules, procedures and obligations of that subcommittee are, and iron them out between all parties involved in a discussion, and then bring it back.
I'll object to that because we have a committee that could do that. Mr. Brooks?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The only reason I wanted all parties to be involved for hashing out what the updates of rules and procedures would be for what our obligations are on the subcommittee is because when it was just, I think part of the reason of what happened with the playground was because it was just mainly in the staff's hands for decisions for a lot of it. So if we're all wondering what is our roles and our purposes here, do we want to discuss and refine that, or do we want the staff to just tell us and then get confined to that?
I think correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Wall, you wanted the staff to just come up with a starting point to discuss to go to the committee. Did I get that wrong or is that right?
That is correct. And, it doesn't have to be that way, but I think they have a better understanding of how they work together on some of these things, I'm guessing, than we do. And so I'm hoping that they can help to have a starting place.
That help or not, Mr. Brooks?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It helps. I just thought that the issue was between the communication between us and the school board, not necessarily the staff's abilities. I think the staff have it on lock. We're the ones who don't have it on lock. And so us getting together and defining exactly what our roles are, I think would be more beneficial to the underlying issue.
Okay, well, we have an amendment and we have objection. Anybody else want to talk about this before we take a vote? Madam Clerk, Ms. Hall.
Yes, I'm objecting to the amendment. I just feel like it muddies the waters at this point. We're asking for staff to tell us, kind of how they do it and the process that works best for the two bodies. And I feel like getting too far into the weeds on this is just gonna make it more complicated than it needs to be.
Mr. Brooks.
I definitely appreciate that. And I mean, it already seems very complicated as is.
Yeah. Could you repeat the amendment for Ms. Wendell's sake?
Yes, it would be to have members of each of the organizations, CBJ, JSD, and city staff get together and work on updates of what our rules, procedures, and obligations are from the subcommittee body.
All right, with that, we have an amendment and objection. Madam Clerk, will you call roll?
Assemblymember Brooks,
Yes.
Assemblymember Smith,
No.
Assemblymember Kelly,
No.
Assemblymember Hall,
No.
Assemblymember Atkinson,
No.
Assemblymember Steininger,
No.
Assemblymember Wall,
No.
Mayor Walden.
No. So that brings us back to the motion, main motion. Is there objection? Seeing none, that motion passes. So I'll send it to you, Madam President.
Thank you. Do we want to make a motion to, on our side, to support this? So I think it would need to be something very close to Member Walls. Which is why I'm looking ahead. The clerk,
Madam Clerk, will you repeat the motion that we just passed?
Thank you, Mayor Walden. The motion was to direct CBJ staff to work with JSD staff on a proposed process for both bodies to better communicate and make decisions about JSD facility joint projects.
Can I move the previous motion on behalf of the school board? Sure. Let's do that.
let's do that.
I'm seconding.
So, Dr. Sinan, you moved,
I did the previous motion on behalf of the school board.
and we do seconds, so, and Ms. Fromhurst was our second. Okay, any objections?
I have discussion.
Okay, objections for discussion?
We just discussed.
We-
Much more agreeable.
We're learning so much about each other.
We just discussed.
Mr. Whitney?
Yeah, so, I mean, in the facilities committee, regular members are the city engineers and along with our operation director, I don't know if since I've been back on the board, I don't know if there's been a committee meeting without city staff present. I know when Mr. Kelly and we got to work pretty closely with Nathan Coffey when we were on the committee before. So, I mean, we do have a process and a procedure, and the city's engineers and our operation director are jointly informing the committee, and then that goes to the board, which is exactly what happened with this current issue before the meeting, so. And that's been, when I first came on the board in 2016, that was the well-established procedure too. I don't know what happened in the pandemic. I don't know what happened with the Zoncatini playground, but that seems to be what's working now. So I guess I don't understand what we'll do besides that, or if we're going to reinvent what we've done forever, or. I don't know.
I think the idea is to like outline on paper what this process is. Dr. Sinan?
As a, maybe because I'm a tactical example person, if the facilities committee discussed the CIP list in committee, I don't see it on our March agenda as an action item. I see it in the facilities committee report. So it has not come to the full board as an action item.
Yeah.
So if I can finish.
Okay.
So this is what I'm trying to avoid, and this is what happened with the Zontakini playground. It never had consensus with 4 board members. It's 3 members in committee, and then it's 3 members on the project team, and it never came to the full board for a vote. And that is exactly the process that's about to play out for the CIP list, going to the project team. The 3 members going to the project team on the 31st have no authority to speak on behalf of the board, and that's a problem.
Follow up on that one. So the CIP list did go before the board. Well, this most recent one, but that's the one that we already voted on and approved in previous meeting. Did it? I believe we did. But we brought it back because there's going to be a potential bond issue. And we don't have right to, it was informational item in this last meeting. And then with input from the board, the members of the committee will go to this committee, and then that'll come back from the board. And I believe, I haven't voted on a bar, but I imagine we'd have to vote on it in a regular meeting after the committee brings a recommendation back. So we're not that far. We're still in the committee process.
Okay, so let's circle back though, to the motion that's on the floor, which is we ask that staff work together in outlining this process on our end. We need to direct the staff. So CBJ has now directed their staff. Are we going to direct our staff to again help line out this process that hopefully might resolve some issues and provide some clarification? So I'm guessing you can tell where I stand on this. So there was objection for discussion. Is there more discussion? Ms. Collum.
I'm just going to reiterate for Board Member Whitney that we still don't have an idea of what's going on. So I think this is the reason why we need to proceed with creating a framework that we all understand.
Further discussion? Seeing none? Is there still objection? All right, then I'll ask if there's any objection to passing this motion. Seeing none, the motion carries.
Thank you. Mr. Brooks, did you have something? We didn't want to talk when they were doing their thing. Did you have anything to add?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And it's just taking a few steps back and looking at the direction here. And, maybe someone can correct me if I have a misconception, but I thought one of the reasons that led to the issue that was facing was a playground was because of the system that's already put in place. So now we directed staff to come back and tell us about that system, but that doesn't fix the fact that it got us in this scenario. So what I was trying to suggest is that, hey, there's obviously an issue with this process. So why don't we all get together and hash out a way that this process can work better for everyone?
Well, we hope that's what happens, but we'll see. Any other topics? Okay, sorry, school board, but one of the best ways to communicate is we have a liaison to your board. You do not have one to ours. Just putting it out there. Mr. Brooks does report on it every assembly meeting. He does report on what happened at the school board. So just a thought, put it in that. Mr. Smith.
I don't want to belabor it because it's 9 o'clock and we already have too many late meetings. But I mean, we are separately elected boards. We have our own purview. We set our own policy, set our own budget. I don't know if the liaison is the correct pathway to transmit information. Personally, when I was the liaison, I would have not felt like that was in terms of like a direction from the assembly. I mean, I guess, or from the school board. I might say they passed a resolution asking for this, or, there's some official motion and I could transmit it. But I would also imagine they'd send it in an email or something. Anyway, like I think this is a good discussion. We are
Yeah.
we are separately elected boards with budgets and policy. I mean, I don't want to say like the assembly but we've had to figure out how to communicate with our delegation in the legislature with priority lists and those type of things. But anyway, there is room to improve, and I'm fully for it. But
Ms. Wall.
Maybe in my experience, I don't know if this is what you're trying to say, Mr. Smith, but like, if the board wants to convey a message to the assembly, writing it down and sending it to the body is the best way. I have seen you all do that. You did it to us recently. We all got that. There have been, but probably if you didn't hear me say that, you might say, oh, Mr. Brooks is going to relay that message, or the mayor is going to relay that message. And my experience, no, I'm not calling you two out, but like the best way is to make sure we all get it, which may sound obvious, but isn't always the case. And if it's helpful to do it the opposite direction too, we can do that.
Yep. Anything else? Sure, Ms. Hall, give us a celebration.
I'll just say, I feel like there's light at the end of the tunnel. You know, the BSA additional money may be sent towards it, even if it's in one-time funding. We're about to have a switch out in leadership at the state level. And I feel like all of you that have served during this time, these last 10 years or so of flat funding, it's just been so challenging. And, I think we need to look ahead and be hopeful and thank those of you who suffered through the past 10 years. Yeah. And thank you for the cell phone ban.
Yes, we appreciate that. Anything else from anybody? All right, going once, going twice. Giving it back to you, Ms. Wall.
Oh, I'll take an agenda too, though. Thank you. That brings us to agenda topic number 4, information only. You have an updated AFC budget calendar. Members of the assembly, dates and such have not changed. We just moved a few things around on the April 1st meeting, which is our next meeting at 5:45. Oh, because that is introduction of the budget. Okay. Mr. Smith?
I'll just say that I'm going to ask you about where the finance committee might talk about bonds on this schedule, because I didn't search. I mean, I searched with my eyes, but I did not, do an actual search, but wanted to see if that would be on there, but we'll figure that out. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. You are correct. We have not chosen a place for it. I assume it's going to be down here somewhere, but we'll work on figuring out what makes sense. Thank you for bringing that forward. With that, we are adjourned.